Hi, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Muttarika Priksapong, Program Management Officer of the Global Education and Training Institute of the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Warmly welcome everyone to this training session on urban resilience and scorecard training for Asia Pacific. Well, even though it's for Asia Pacific because of the time zone, we also are having colleagues from outside of the region joining, which we also warmly welcome. The training today will last about 3.5 hours, and we'll be using this Zoom operations for the whole training. And the training is broken pretty much in two big sections. The first part will be the presentation on the introduction on disaster risk reduction, urban resilience, making city resilient 2030, and we'll be introducing you about the tools called disaster resilience scorecard for cities that would help you to be able to understand the progress on disaster risk reduction and be able to start doing diagnostic exercise to help you plan better for disaster risk reduction. Then we're going to be breaking for about 15 minutes and move into the second half, talking about the development of the disaster risk reduction strategies using the result of the scorecard assessment and also basically binding everything from part one together. And we will be hearing the experience from the 3 cities that are the current Making City Resilient hubs, Making City Resilient 2030 resilience hubs in Asia Pacific, which is Makati City, Incheon Metropolitan City, and Sushi City from China. Then we are going to have the mini quiz to end the training before we have the training wrap up. So the training today will be held only in English, and we're going to be recruiting any questions that you may have for the speakers through the question and answer, the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen. If you see at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the question mark sign. So please feel free to drop any of the questions you may have for the speakers in this, and we'll be picking the questions up throughout the training. And you may also notice already that this training is a certificate program. So we will be providing the certificate of participations to all of those who have attended the training today. And we are very happy to see more than 200 people joining us at the moment. And the certificate will be available on one of the websites for you to self-download, and we will be showing you where you can download the certificate at the end of this training. Also, the training materials will also be made available online. And again, we're going to be dropping you the link on the chat room to see where you can download the materials. So without further ado, I'm going to move into the first session, the introduction to disaster risk reduction, urban resilience, making city resilient 2030, and useful tools. And with me, joining me is my colleague Sunisa Ho, UNDRR Regional Office for Asia Pacific. Sunisa has been working in disaster risk reduction for, I believe, almost 20 years, more or less. And she is now the urban resilience focal point and also the focal point for Making City Resilient 2030 in Asia Pacific. So she will be walking us through this introduction on DRR, urban resilience, and MCR. So passing the floor to you, Sunisa. Please warmly welcome her together.
Thank you very much, Mai, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe good evening and here, good morning from Bangkok. So let me also share my screen without further ado, because I believe that today we might have a long session together. So let me share my screen. Everyone see my screen? I believe it's full screen. Okay, thank you. So from my sessions, it will be walking you through on the introduction on the DRR or disaster risk resilience, and also MCR 2030s or making city resilience. So let's start with the key concept. So everyone might heard a word called natural disaster. But actually, so as written here, the disasters are not natural. So why I say it in this way? Because if you see the first picture, I mean the upper on the left and the right side, so it's a drought, right? And it's also a landslide, but it's just a natural hazard because there is no loss in livelihood, no loss in life. But when you see the picture on the left below, so here we call disaster. So why? Because there is an earthquake as a natural hazard. But there's also the people living in the earthquake-prone area that we call exposure. You can see there's a lot loss in like the housing destroyed, and there might be some loss in life and livelihood. So, and you also see here that the housing here is living in a maybe not strong enough for withstand the earthquake. So here we call vulnerability. So when hazard meets exposure means vulnerability. So it's become the disaster and it's not natural. So when you're looking at the right below the picture, you see like a lot of the unset the not so strong housing here, and it's also risks to the disaster in the future, right? Maybe some the landslide, or maybe in case of the rainfall, heavy rainfall, so that might cause maybe some like housing that become like a disaster. So let's going to understanding on the disaster risk concept. So from here, you see that, sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. That was my mistake. So from here, you see that the, okay, sorry, that was some glitch in my technology. Okay, sorry. So here you see that there was like a rock on a hill, right? There might be some day that will fall down. Then we call hazard. But then every time that was maybe also one day there was one family setting out their house here, and it is in the risk-prone area. So, and this house also that might be made of a weak material or maybe lack of insurance. So then it's exposure and vulnerability. So then you can see that the poor housing and unsafe infrastructure in the high risk location. So that also leading to disaster risks that one day the rock will fall and maybe like on the house. So then when we build the wall here, so we mitigate the risks, and it's also towards the resilience, reduce risk towards the resilience. Or another slide that debrief you on understand risks, disaster risks, and also why it's affect like the loss in life and livelihood. So from here you see that the disaster is not natural, right? So it's only natural hazard. But when you made a choice that to build a house here, so the choice you make is also contribute to increase risks or reduce risks, as showing in this picture that, well, you build a house very prone to like the volcano, and then one day it's erupt. So that it's become like a disaster, loss in life and livelihood. So when we're looking at the changing environment here, because when we manage risks, it's very complex, especially like for the national government, or even though like for the local government. So why? Because, well, as a local government, as a city, so you have limited resources, right? So when climate change happen, so in changing environment, climate change makes your disaster more severe, more often, and also sometimes it's unpredictable. Sometimes you see the oldest like more rainfall than the last or the previous year. So when the local government has limited resources to dealing with this changing environment, so it's really need to unlock the understanding on how to manage risks, especially for the complex risks as now. So there's a concept called the resilience, understanding resilience. So what does that mean? So the resilience here, you see that it doesn't mean that when you have resilience, so you don't have any disaster hits your city or country. It will, but when it hits, so your community, your city, your country will resistant, absorbing, buffering, and recovering in a very short period of time. When you're comparing between low resilience and high resilience, you see that the impact is lessened and also the recovery period is shortened. So then move a little bit further on. So well, what to do when we living in a very uncertain environment or uncertain situation at this moment. So many countries, many cities that, well, as we know that we have well disaster management, we have well disaster response because we learn from experience, but because of the climate change, because of the changing environment here, so what you have done and it works might not working anymore. So then you might need to live with the uncertainty. You might need to understand more, not only the DRR or disaster risk reduction, but sometimes you might need to understand more on like the building resilience. So when we're looking at like the global framework, many of you might hear a lot on standard framework for disaster risk reduction. So this is a big umbrella for as a global framework that adopted at the 3rd UN World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction in 2015. So it is a 15 years that framework that focusing on the 4 priority for actions. And that main focus is we focus on reducing in loss in life and livelihood. So from those, there are 7 targets that for, well, many people might heard like for reduce, 3 increase, what standard framework aim to reduce. The first one, definitely that the numbers of mortalities and also the affected people, economic loss, and also like the critical infrastructure damage. So this is we try, the standard framework try to reduce. But what they want to increase, first one is that, well, to have a better national and local GR strategy. And also that the international cooperation between developing and developed country need to helping each other. And last but not least is focusing on the early warning system. So from Sendai framework that it's already, I think it's halfway. So actually the Sendai framework is not worked alone, but you might also heard like other global framework like SDG or Paris Agreement. So all of them are interconnected. And last year, there was a midterm review of Sendai framework just to see that how well that we implement this framework, how well that or how far that each country achieved the target, the 7 target that we have. And you see from here that some target, for example, target A and target E that focusing on DRR strategy, they're well achieved. So why others still fall behind? Like for example, target E that focusing on reduced number of affected people, or maybe like the international cooperation. So it's our early warning system. So that's also showing that we have a good planning, but sometimes we also need to do more in terms of implementations to reduce impact from the disaster. So when we're looking at so how we do that, so there's also some political declaration also mentioned that we need to localizing DRR. So what does that means that, well, DRR or disaster risk reduction implementation is really needed to implement at the local level. And from this, it's also showing that there's still major gap that between like the implementation at the local level. So means that at the national level and also like the local level, we still have some work and more work to be done to strengthening climate and disaster resilience. So from localizing DRR, so you might heard that there's so many initiatives, so many agencies that working on implementing DRR at local level. And UNDRR, we also working together with different partners, and we have one initiative that called Making City Resilience, that it was a campaign before in last 10 years. And MCR or Making City Resilience that start in 2021 to 2020-30s. And the city, we call city here, but it's mean like our local government that it can be the province or it can be city, it can be the municipalities. So what MCR or Making City Resilience aim to bring, like first of all, we aim to bring like the resilience roadmap. So we have some roadmap for city, for local government, to have a better understanding on how we can implement DR at local level. And because building the resilience, it's not only one agency working. So this initiative is a global partnership that we working together with different agencies that doing the same thing. And also like there's also some regional network that working with local government at the regional level. And because we also understand that some challenge for the local government is that the access to the tools and knowledge. So then MCR, we have and tool and knowledge that easy for the local government to have a better access. So then let's looking at what resilience roadmap of MCR is. So from here, you see that the resilience roadmap is a guidance for the city to move along from you have a better understanding on DRR concept on resilience to a better planning and also to have a better implementation. So then who's engaging in MCR 2030s? Actually, MCR is a space that's open for everyone, every agency to cooperate. There are like some agency at global level, and they're called as a call partner, identify strategy. But when we're looking at the regional level, so there's also numbers of agencies working together under MCR working to implement, and we welcome everyone to implement the DRR working with local level. And as I mentioned before, that building resilience is not it cannot be done by one agency. So there is a supporting entities, which can be like the local CSO, NGO, media, academia, institutes, or any agencies that working together with the local government, as well as the national government and association of municipalities that working together. And last but not least is we also have the Resilience Hub that you will meet them like 3 cities as Mike mentioned before. So the Resilience Hub are the city that they are willing to mentor, they're willing to share experience to other cities. And as city is the best teacher, so you can MCR support like the city like learning from each other. So let's move a little bit further on build not only initiative that working together to build resilience at local level, but there are also many tools from different partners, and UNDRR is one of the core partner of MCR. So we have a tools that put it here called 10 Essential for Making City Resilience. It's a guidance for city to help city to have a better understanding or have a better way to understand that how to reduce risks and also building at the local level. But from here, you see there are 3 different groups. The first one is focusing on city governance, like under essential 1 to 3. So just just brief you a little bit, and then might explain like in more detail to you. So for the first group, the essential one, that organizing for disaster resilience. So you might have a better understanding on which agent role and responsibility, which agency doing what, and where is the resource. In case of you might need for the DR and building resilience. So you know where you connect with, you know where you can get those resources. So essential to focusing on risks, you need to understand past risks, current risk, and also future risk scenario. And the third one, the essential three, like whatever that you do, you need budget to do. So then strengthening financial capacity for resilience, you need budget for the risk assessment. So when we're looking at these three essentials, so it's focused on corporate city governance at the city level. But then let's move to the second group, that you might looking at the overall integrated planning, overall picture of your country, of your cities. So essential for focusing on, you have a good city planning. Essential 5, that you might heard a lot on nature-based solutions, like bringing nature to reduce risks to the disaster. And then essential 6, that focusing on building capacity for other institutions, that not only maybe like city government understand the resilience, but actually other agencies need to understand this concept, because risk is everyone's business. And essential 7 is that you might need to build the resilience for different groups in your city, maybe like the person with disability, the women's group, the youth group, or any group, that they also need to understand the risks and also the DR concept. And last but not least, for this group, that is you need to build the resilient infrastructure that withstand the future risks, right? So this second group, that focusing like on the overall picture, that you need to see in your city, what how well it is. And then the last group, that focusing on response planning. For example, like you need to have a good disaster response and also build back better. But from the overall 10 essential, you can see that from essential 1 to 8, it's the activity that you do before the disaster happened. And then there's only essential 9 and 10 that focusing on the activity under disaster occur. So this also showing that the activity that you do before the disaster is very important, right? So apart from that, there's also another tool supporting on the disaster risk reduction and resilience planning, like like from the 10 essential. These two that might explain in detail that help how to helping you identify the priority area, identify any gap for your cities, and how to engage different stakeholders to work together to build resilience at your city. So this is like the overall of the picture on the DRR basic concept, and then what MCR is. So these are the list of key resources that you might, in case you might want to learn more. And as Mike said, that we will share this PowerPoint presentation. So if you have any questions for this session, so please feel free to let me know. So Mike, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunisa. Very comprehensive introduction and give us the foundations of moving towards to the next sessions. There are a couple of questions I want to bring up to you. One participant spotted that despite some progresses on some of the Sendai targets, there are still some lags behind for target B and C, for example, the reduction in the human impact and also economic losses. You have any observation on what could have been the reason for that?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Well, actually, like many countries that they did well in terms of disaster management, but as I mentioned before, there's also some uncertain circumstance, for example, climate change, that makes the risk difficult to manage. So even though like we doing well, but some elements are coming in. So that makes us achieve more difficult. And you can see COVID as a great sample that makes our goals, not only Sendai, but also SDG and Paris Agreement, like fall behind the achievement that we plan to do.
Thank you. So I think from what you say is the intensity of the hazard that is happening is also increased. It comes in different forms. And to add to your observation, I think we have seen, for example, the case of the wildfire in LA, for example, that's not a lot of death, but huge economic impact, right? So the impact of the disaster is becoming more related to how we are building the cities or how we are actually coping with the socio-economic status, right? So on the other observation, it could be that a lot of the cities or countries have been doing a lot in terms of planning, but maybe there are not a lot in terms of implementation yet to make sure that we actually change infrastructure or upgrading our knowledge on how to make sure that all these critical risks are reduced. Maybe our businesses are still built in the risk-prone areas that when something happens, it creates more impact in economics and human impact, right? So those are the things that makes us more need to be more concerned, let's say, that disaster is not natural and we have to really take the governance into action to make sure that we really implement to reduce this risk. The other questions I have is coming, I believe, from the academic institution. Was a question asking how academic institution can be engaged in MCR 2030, and is there any good example best practices of how the universities are working within MCR 2030?
Yes, actually, Academia Institute is one of the key actors under MCR. So I can give the answer from Thailand, that we have university called Mahasarakham University that work together with UNDRR on capacity building to the local government through Mahasarakham municipalities, using the tools that like the 10 essentials and also like the scorecard that we'll explain later. To identify gap and key area. So then they can identify that, well, one of the key is to enhance capacity and knowledge for the local, especially elderly. And because in Thailand, like there are so many elderly like living in like another province. So from those, they have they develop the song, the folk song, adding on like using the DR concept and the local university working together with the communities and use this song like just to enhance capacity, like rather than sitting during the training, but using the folk song to have better access to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have other examples also from universities that many of the universities start embedding the knowledge on disaster risk reduction resilience. So even the tools that we are introducing under the MCR 2030 in their academic curriculum, and not only teaching the undergraduate, graduate schools, but they also have formed spatial training courses, for example, targeting to support different government officials within their localities, and they actually give the certificate training programs. And some also provide coaching and supporting the local governments in their community services, let's say, to be able to understand better disaster resilience and be able to plan better and engage with other, not only scientific and technological communities, but also with sometimes private sector or even the NGOs or community level. So I think the academic partner is really the key also to expanding and sustaining the knowledge and capacities of the local governments. Right? There is also one question asking that, do you need any permission from anyone to do disaster risk reduction in your country?
No, Actually, there is no permission, but like for Sendai framework, there is also voluntary framework that, well, because building resilience, reducing risk is not only one agency's responsibility, but actually it's working together in terms of like multi-stakeholder involvement that can help the city like to have a good like DR's implementation.
So the Sendai framework also says that the state government is the lead because they have to provide the framework for disaster risk reduction in the countries. And each country has different legal framework or policy framework. But most of the framework and policy, and even under the Sendai framework, says that disaster risk reduction is a shared responsibility. So everyone actually has the responsibility to support and work together. So it's within your own capacity and premised organizational role. You will be able to contribute however do you want. But of course, if it's well aligned with the government policy and framework, and you are able to sensitize them to improve the policy and implementation, that will give a better sum of the impact of how you reduce the risk in your government and the country. Then there is the questions around specifically around the Making City Resilient 2030 and the Resilience Hub. In the Resilience Hub application form, it says that there is a mandatory, there's a $25K US contribution required from the cities who want to apply as a Resilience Hub. Can you explain a little bit more about that, please?
Well, actually, there is no fee at all, like even though to join MCR or becoming the Resilience Hub, because well, becoming the Resilience Hub is to encourage city to share their success story. So the city under state see that they have like a good like implementation on the DRR strategy. So they can share their success story, they can share their experience to other cities, and there is no fee like to pay at all.
Okay, so it's can be in-kind contribution, and we also will see some examples of the Resilience Hub that we'll be presenting later on today. So I think that's pretty much about the question for you at the moment. And there are repeated questions around the training materials. We have dropped the link in the chat box on where you can go and download the presentation. So please feel free to do that. And all materials are already available on that website. Yes, and there are some questions around how to do the resilience assessment. And so I'll be touching up on that in the next presentation. Thank you so much, Sunisa, and we'll invite you back to presenting in the later session. So I'm going to move on from Sunisa's session to the next session, talking more in particularly about the use of the disaster resilience scorecard for cities that can help to for the local governments to do the self-assessment and be able to improve the resilience planning. So I hope you can see my screen clearly here. Yes. So just to recap a little bit, when we are talking about the disaster risk reduction and resilience, when we are talking about resilience, the key term of it is an umbrella concept of looking at how the city is coping with all the impact, shock, stress, whether it's the acute event like earthquake or cyclone or so, or even like the ongoing day-to-day operation of the cities. And a city can never be resilient if one of the sectors in the city is not resilient. So when we're looking at the resilience, it has to address all of the system within the cities. And if you look at the city structure, you will see that the city is comprised of so many different agencies working at different level and owning different type of data and operation. So you would see one government agency is working for healthcare, one government agency is working for agricultural food and food security, one agency working on communications, maybe a few working on transportation, and so and so. But the city government, like for example, the mayor's office, should be able to connect all of these different government sectors together and work together to make sure that they understand what are the causal relation impact between the sector. And we have seen very clearly in the case of, for example, the COVID-19, that it started off as a health system. But if you get more infections, then it actually influence towards the closure of the cities. You have the lockdown, then it create the impact to economic education sector, for example, that school has to be converted to online modalities. Government officer cannot go into the office. City also lose the income because of the closure of the cities, and then there are less tourists. Business cannot be conducted as usual. Or you also may see in the case of cyclone or heavy floods that if it's flooded, for example, the economic activities, the markets, then you cut them, and the transportation get cut off. Then there are impact not only to the market itself, but maybe through all the logistic channels, and that might also impact, like, hospital in terms of caretaking of patient, because there are not enough food to feed into the system and stuff like that. So it's very important that when you look at resilience, you have to understand the potential failure of one system on the other, and be able to bring different stakeholders within the cities together to start talking about the subject and be able to plan together. The other thing to remember when we are thinking of resilience is that, as I said, it's not only focusing on acute event like earthquake or cyclone per se, but it also needs to embrace the chronic stress, day-to-day societal issues, poverty, access to healthcare, and so and so, because this have interrelationship. And if you don't have, for example, the regular access to healthcare, and you are being impacted by mega flood and you get injured, for example, that existing lack of healthcare access will also be hampered more to and create impact to your health and injuries more than if you have the access, right? So when you're doing the resilience strategies, the planning, you have to look at both the day-to-day development activities together with how this can be impact or creating the linkage to the impact of the hazard or acute events that may happen. The third point when we're looking at resilience is that it's a long-term process. It's not a one-stop, one-time, one-shot activities that you do, boom, and done, and you finish. But it's kind of building endurance, building capacities, building the ability of the cities to be able to withstand different type of shock and stresses, and be able to make sure that you collaborate well, you understand the changing environment, you understand the changing governance system, you understand the changing of the hazard, so that you are able to be adaptive to what may happen and be able to deal with the uncertainties moving forward. So once you step your foot into resilience building, you have to commit long-term to make things happen, because all of this resilience building is as like you are taking care of your health. You have to take a long-term approach to make sure that your health improves over time, right? It doesn't happen just overnight or just through one-time activities. And this diagram on the screen is showing them a simplified process of how you can actually make the cities becoming more resilient. And it's simplified because it just go step by step, saying that first of all, you have to understand what disaster risk reduction is about. You need to raise awareness. You have to understand, you need to do the planning. You have to be able to engage multi-stakeholders in the activities. You have to understand the concept of resilience. So this is what we have been doing since the beginning of this training. Then the next step is to move towards the planning process. You have to be able to do the assessment and be able to plan better, and continue to develop the plans and implement it, and be able to monitor and evaluate your progress. So step first, in terms of understanding and raising awareness on disaster risk reduction, Sunisa has already mentioned to you about this 10 essentials for making city resilient. It's basically a guiding principle, and she has already explained that it's encompass 10 different topics, issues that is relevant to how a local government or even a country is operating. It breaks down the concept of disaster risk reduction in the way that it's more tangible and understandable by looking at the first three essentials in terms of the corporate governance system on how you organize your team, organize your structure, organize your organizations, collaboration between organizations, in terms of understanding your risk, the scenarios, whether it's current, the past that you have seen, or also foreseeing what could be the future risk scenarios. And also the most important among the governance system is also to look at the finance capacity. You have to be able to have the budget to implement all of the plans. Right? Then the 5 essential 48 tackle disaster risk reduction in different development sectors. Disaster risk reduction can be done through urban development and design, how you pursue your infrastructure, the urban planning, building codes, land use planning, how you build the building can withstand a certain level of earthquake, for example, is also done by a few of the government offices like the urban development and planning, for example. Essential 5 looks at the non-gray infrastructure into the use of the nature-based solutions. You can also reduce risk through the use of the nature, whether it's increasing the room for rivers, you use the benefits from all the greens to absorb the heat, to absorb the excess humidity, for example. You can also reduce risk through building capacities, which can be done through the institutional, whether you have academic institution, you have the training programs available for the government officials, for those who are partaking in the operation in any kind of development in the cities, whether you have ability to capacitate the non-governmental societal partners like the private sectors, the communities, academic youth children, and also you can reduce risk through building resilience infrastructure, and that pretty much encompasses everyone in your locality. And then the last two essentials are probably the traditional disaster management ish that you have probably be more familiar with, which is touching upon risk reduction through preparations of disaster response and also build back better so that you do not repeat the vicious cycle. So once you understand this concept, what you should get from this is that first, it emphasized that disaster risk reduction is a shared responsibility. If you see this diagram, you will see that there is no single agency, doesn't matter where you are, that can do all of these 10 essentials to make your city resilient. So what does that mean? It means that you have to bring back that system of systems, engagement of different departments, government, mayor's office, disaster management office, bring in environmental office, education, healthcare, agriculture, etc. Anyone you can name off within the cities to work together. You also should be engaging with other societal partners, communities to help you reach the last miles. You should be engaging with private sector because they are probably the one who create the economy for your cities. And if they are not resilient, then there's no way that your city can be resilient. It also emphasized that basically that you need to create collaboration and build up and make sure that everything that you do is integrated so that you have the robust city development vision that integrates all of these collaborations and also the risk reduction focus in the way that you are doing your practices. So once you understand this concept, the next question is, how can you start making sure that you can bring in all of these partners and be able to understand where your cities are operating based on these 10 essentials? So there go to the second step in terms of doing the resilience assessment. And here in this session, I will be introducing one of the tools that UNDRR has been sharing over the last decade that would help the cities be able to self-ask against these 10 essentials, how you are operating in terms of organizing your DRR on your cities, how are you operating in terms of reducing risk through urban development and design, how much are you capacitating your non-governmental agency, and so and so. So this scorecard, with disaster resilience scorecard for cities is the full name. We call it in short the scorecard, that comes in so many forms, but the basic ones that has been introduced, there are many versions before this, but this current version has been used since 2017 after the adoption of the Sendai framework. And it's there are two levels. The dark navy blue cover is a preliminary scorecard. The green one is a detailed scorecard. And this scorecard pretty much have contains the list of questions that are categorized based on the 10 essentials that both Sunisa and I just introduced. And there are the questions where local governments can take and self-ask where you are and be able to see both the current progress you have been doing well and also the gaps that you may be lacking, and use that to build up the priorities of what the city should be doing in the next planning cycle. And as I said, that disaster risk reduction is a shared responsibilities. It's very important that the local governments, particularly the mayor's office, is taking the lead in this exercise, so that you have the authority to be able to connect and collaborate with the other agencies, all the government departments, and also the agencies in the city. In some of the countries, also this can be coordinated through the disaster risk reduction and management offices. So it really depends on how your local legal framework and structure is being set. So let's see the example of the indicator in this scorecard. So there are questions. For example, this one is a question under Essential 1, coordination, organization coordination and participation. The question is asking, is there a multi-agency or sectoral mechanism with appropriate authority and resources for disaster risk reduction? So you have the option to score 0, 1, 2, and 3. 0, if you have the lead agencies, but they lack proper authority or under-resourced to take any disaster risk reduction activities. You can score 1 if you have the city teams that have the authority and convening power, but do not have the proper interagency collaboration or are still under-resourced. You can score 2 if you have the lead agencies properly resourced with authority to act, but maybe the work for this agency are centered around only specific disaster risk reduction aspect, for example, only centering around disaster response preparedness, but does not encompass to other DRR activities beyond emergency response. But you can score 3 if your city has the lead agency teams that are well established and have all the resource authorities and also work across all the 10 essential, all the DR stages. Right? So you can choose which score reflects the best in your city circumstance. And most of the time, this exercise, we do not recommend it to be done by only one person, because you might not have all of the information. It can be heavily biased. So this exercise recommended to do in the workshop style, where you bring in different stakeholders, multi-agencies in the same room, ask the same questions, and you'll be surprised that you might have different answers, even though you are from the same local governments or local communities. And when you have this difference in the selection of the answers, that is the great opportunity for you to start exchanging your views, why you think that your city should score 3, why your city is actually scoring at 1. And then that kind of debate should be, it's helping us to gather evidence base. And of course, the debate shouldn't be just like, I have heard that our city has that plan, or we have heard that our city has that local government who is in charge of this and that. But the debate should be based on tangible evidence that you say, oh, we have the disaster risk reduction legal framework that says that this agency X has a responsibility to act. That agency might say, like, yes, we have the mechanism. It's called the mayor office letter number that called for multi-agency coordination. But some might say that, oh, we have never been invited, even though we are on that list of the agency that should be invited, but we have never partake in these activities and so on. So those kind of information is enriching the discussion and giving you more ground information that is so valuable for you to move into the next step of developing the plan, or even using in doing the project development and secure funding with other financial resources, because all of these reasons why and all the evidence that you gather actually helps you to create one fact for your own city that is acceptable based on the evidence. Then it's justifiable why you need to intervene or get the funding to do these certain activities. So we're actually going to spend some time after this for you to actually practice doing this scorecard exercise together. We actually have now, let me see, more than 370 participants together in this training. And we're going to be doing this exercise through Slido. I'm going to explain to you that the exercise will be broken down into 3 steps. So first step is to do the scoring exercise using this scorecard questions as the example. And then we're going to go into step 2 and 3 and jointly identify the priority areas and planning further actions. So let's go first with step 1 in the scoring exercise. Here, I would like you to take up your mobile phone and scan the QR code. Or if you're working on your computer, you can log on, open the website called slido.com. You will be asked to input some code to go into the exercise. So please type UNDRR1 in the space. So we'll give you some minutes to grab your phone or your computer, log on to slido.com, and join by typing UNDRR1. Yes, so in the first question, I'm just going to read out the question first while waiting for many of you to join. Does the city master plan or equivalent plan, relevant strategy and plan, include and implement disaster risk reduction approaches in line with the Sendai framework? You can choose no plans. You don't have any plans, no compliance, scoring 0. You can score 1 if you have some plans that is partially compliance with Sendai framework and covering only some of the 10 essentials. You can score 2 if you have a plan that fully covers all 10 essentials, but it's a standalone, it doesn't get integrated anywhere. But you can score 3 if you have a plan that is fully compliant with the Sendai framework, covering all of the 10 essentials, and also fully integrated into, for example, your urban development plan of the city. Right, I've seen now 90 participants have joined in. Very good. You are very fast in using this technology. So let me wait for a little bit to see where for participants to fill in more. Now we have about half of the participants saying that their cities have plans to offer partial compliance with the Sendai framework and covering some of the 10 essentials the most. Right? In reality, when you are doing is make sure that you back up your scoring with evidence. So you can jot down in the document and say, like, oh, we agree that we want to answer this number 1 because we have the plan called Plan ABC, it's starting from 2020 to 2025. But in the plan, it might be talking only about emergency response preparedness and some of the governance issues, but it doesn't talk about how you improve the building codes, or it doesn't talk about how you can pre-plan your recovery efforts and stuff like that. So very good. So we have more than half of the participants now joining the exercise. Still, majority of you score 1. But very impressively, more than 1/4 of your cities actually score 3 fully integrated DRR plan with all compliance with the Sendai framework and all the 10 essentials. That's very impressive. Right? For those who do not score 3, then of course you can see the gap. No? If you are scoring 2, you can see that to move to score 3, the next step is perhaps that you need to make sure that your DRR plan talks to your climate change plans and talks to also the urban development plan so that it become all fully integrated. If you are scoring 0, no plans, then hey, you can start thinking of how to do the planning. If you are scoring 1, that your plan is only covering partial compliance to the 10 essential and Sendai framework, maybe you have to relook at how you can actually expand the topics of coverage in your next cycle plan. And of course, the 10 essentials and the scorecard is actually helpful for you to be able to address these gaps. Then let's move to question 2. Question 2 is coming from Essential 2 on understanding risk. The question is asking whether you have the agreed scenarios on the citywide exposure and vulnerability from different hazards. One hazard, groups of hazards, and of course, score 0 if you don't have any scenario information available. This is focusing on vulnerability and exposure. You know who is being exposed in the cities. How are they being exposed? What kind of the level of vulnerability of those people, the assets that may happen with floods, flood combined with cyclone, pandemic, earthquake, wildfire, and etc. If you have some disaster scenario information available, then you score 1, and that's the majority of our participants here. Very impressive that 30%, 1/3 of our training participants says that your city has a comprehensive suite of disaster scenarios to understand all the exposure and vulnerability. Very good. That's a very good benchmark that you have. Yes. So let's move on to the question number 3. Yes. So question number 3 is coming from Essential 6 that talks about institutional capacity. And this question is asking whether your local government has the coordinated PR, public relations, and education campaign and ways to communicate risk to your public. So you can score, you need to scroll down the screen to be able to see at the bottom, 2, 3, 1. But if you are using your phone, I think you can see it very clearly. So score 3, you have fully coordinated. Very important is that the message is rich, 75% of the city population. If you have the several campaigns, message rich about 50 or over 50, then you score 2. If about only 25 of the city population is rich, there are no like robust communication, risk communication channel, then you score 1. And if less than 25% of the people are reachable, then you go to score 0. Right. So here you see that most of you are saying that the city actually does not have only have some programs, but it only reached 25% of the city population. So this really means that there is a clear lag behind previous questions also in terms of the risk communication and public communication for understanding risk. Very good, very good. So let's move to question 4. We have 5 questions in this exercise. First, question 4, I think this might be a bit difficult also for you to answer because it's asking about private sector engagement. The question is asking whether you know, the local government knows, what proportion of businesses in your local community, the cities, have the business continuity plan. And those plans have been updated in the last 1.5 years. Right? What is the business continuity plan? It's the plan of which can help the business run, even though they are facing shock, stress, or they are amidst disasters. Right? So if your economy, the city's economy is driven a lot by the private sector, you really need to have the private sectors investing in developing this kind of continuity plan. Right? More than half of you say that 0, under 20%. It's not surprising because often the time that's what we have seen from the colleagues or the people that we have been doing the training with. One other challenge that you may have is that you might not have the information at all, whether they have or they don't have. So in the real exercise, you can also note on the side that you cannot answer this question because you don't have information. Then the gap is that if you don't have the information, you then have to start doing some baseline assessment, engage with the private sectors to develop the baseline of understanding how much business actually have been engaged in this risk reduction and continuation plan. So this question is clearly the key gaps that we have seen so far in the 4 questions. So let's move to the last question with the interest of time that we have here. Last question is coming from Infrastructure Resilient Essential 8. The question is asking whether the transportation services will be damaged, loss of operation during the worst case scenarios. Worst case scenarios meaning that anything worst possible can happen in your cities. It can be combination of hazards that happen. For example, if you have, imagine the earthquake in Japan that triggered the tsunami and then trigger the nuclear power plant leakage. Those kind of scenario can be the worst case. It might be something that will hardly happen, but possible to happen even though with the slight percentage. So you can imagine in those scenarios, what would happen to your transportation system? It will be totally lost, like severe significant loss, or it can survive. Most probable cases here, meaning that it might not be the worst case scenario, but it could be a recurrent risk that you are seeing. Let's say if your city is flooded every year, those floods might not be the most severe, but it's definitely going to happen. In those cases, those most probable cases, how is your transportation is doing? So it's surprising to see almost 40% of you are saying that there will be significant loss of service in your transportation services, even though it's under this most probable scenarios. So this is very critical in terms of making sure the city is becoming resilient or not. Thank you so much for participating in this exercise. So now you get the idea of how you read the questions and do the scoring. And you probably get the idea also out of the 5 questions, which questions strike you the most that you feel that your cities should be working to improve the most, right? So that's gonna go into our second step of voting. Which area is the area that you feel that your city needs to take the actions the most? So you have the options to choose from these 5 questions. 1 is on the planning, 2nd is on exposure vulnerability knowledge, 3rdly is on risk communication, 4thly is on private sector, 5th is on transportation. So once again, you go to the Slido exercise, and then you can choose out of these 5 questions, 5 areas of work. You have done the exercise in step 1. Which question, which area of work is the area that you feel is the most significant that should be taken seriously in your cities? So this is how we're actually doing the exercise. So you scan the same QR code, stay in the same QR code, and you can do the voting. So again, in the real scorecard exercise, you will probably encounter more than 40, 50 gaps area. There are more than 20, 40, 100 questions that you are being asked to rate the progress of your city. And there is no way that you will be able to do 100 activities, 100 actions in one go, right? So you need to be able to prioritize and see which areas of work is the most critical one for your city so that you can prioritize those and be able to focus the activities in your next budgeting cycle. Of course, you need money to be able to implement, right? So if you have identified 10, 100 activities, you cannot implement all at once. So you have to prioritize and select only a few to be able to move on to the next steps. So this step 2 of the exercise is helping you to practice looking at your exercise rating in the scorecard, and then do the voting among your stakeholders and adjustment discussion to be able to vote for the areas of work. Okay, good. So keep this in the back of your mind. So majority of you says that integration with disaster risk reduction into local development plan is the most critical actions that you want to work on for your cities. So let's take example now that all 300 participants that are in this training are in the same cities. And if you are in the same city, this is what you are voting for, that it should be the majority. And all other areas of work may be the second ones in terms of improving the risk communication, so and so. Now we're going to move into step 3 of the activities. So you keep in mind now, your cities need to improve disaster risk reduction planning mechanism. You want to integrate that into the urban development plan. You need to improve the plan to be compliant. So in the next steps, then you have to plan further actions. In your current city situation, if you want to improve the planning mechanism, what could be the actions that your city should take? Right? So here is the opportunity for you to start listing out the activity to improve your planning mechanism. So you can go to slido.com again and you type the answer, one action per one typing. For example, it can be the increase awareness of the mayor's office. We have to do trainings to make people understand what it is. So you do type the activity, you don't type the UNDRR one is the code to access. So that's not that. So you can also think of, yes, you see a capacity building of the local chief executive. There are increasing local awareness. You have to create collaboration, integration, coordination, and so on. Right. So these are the example of the actions that you can brainstorm within your city governments or multi-stakeholders. So if you actually have the workshop that you're talking about improving the planning, one activity, let's say capacity building, we say there is a capacity building for executive and legislator. We have capacity pretty much the chief executive. So if you have this as a result of the multi-stakeholders engagement workshop, and you put this as the follow-up actions, then you can build up the weight to make sure that your mayors is endorsing that you have to take this step to move forward, right? You can also create collaboration. I think one of the key ones that I'm seeing from here is capacity building, right? Raising awareness, capacity building most of the times. And of course, there are some staff, some policy, private plans, people. So you actually have to basically involve these different people in maybe the workshop and build capacity to make sure that they understand what disaster risk reduction is, then understand the planning mechanism and be able to move forward. So thank you very much. So this is an example of the exercise so that you understand that scorecard alone does not help, but scorecard through the multi-stakeholder engagement and participation to build up the consensus, the evidence base can actually help lead to concrete actions of which you can build on for the planning. So in terms of using the scorecard, there's so many cities that have used the scorecard, and we'll be hearing a few from a few examples from the cities that will be sharing experience later on today. But of course, once you have completed the scorecard, you can get the baseline measurement of your city standpoint on disaster risk reduction. You also have an opportunity to create dialogue and engagement with multi-stakeholders. You can identify the priorities of actions, and that will be used very, very useful for the development of the city resilience strategies. And once you have that, it can easily lead to actions because you have the consensus of the people in the cities. You have the agreement on what could be a priority. So you can leverage your efforts much better. So you know the examples, how to use a scorecard. I'm just going to show you a bit of how the what the scorecard looked like. So we have the printed version in PDF version. You can download and easily print. We also have the Excel tool versions of which you can interact, include your answers and be able to document the evidence. I'm going to show you this is the Excel files. So there will be area, you see the questions. There is also the comment box that explain a little bit about the questions. What you need to do is first you select the answer options. Second, you have to document the evidence of why you score it that way. And you can also identify the actions, who will be responsible for it, and the timeline for use. In the Excel, there is also the result diagram, the spider web diagram that give you the ability to see, like the gray area is actually the blank scoring. The blue area is how much you actually score. In the reality, your city might score something, a mixture of the blue and gray. So any essential that has a lot of blue shade area means that's the area of which your city is progressing the best. And the area where you have a lot of gray shades, that's where you still have a lot of gaps. So in this, very clearly, Essential 3 on finance is the clear gap of the city, but Essential 1 in terms of governance, they are scoring perfect, so they are good at that. So this kind of diagrams also can be broken down into different essentials, so it's very useful. You can download the reports, and you can use for your planning mechanism. Okay. And in terms of applying the scorecard, it's very important to note that the scorecard is helping you to measure yourself against the time. So you measure yourself today, what you have done well, what gap you still have, and you can reassess using the scorecard in the next few years to see how much you have improved, what else you are left to do more, right? And it's not for comparing cities because each of the cities have different nature, different number of population, different complexities, different risk that they are exposed to. So you have different challenges between the cities. So you can never compare orange and apple, right? But you can compare your orange day 1 to orange day 5. Right? And make sure that you use the assessment results in your planning, because just doing the assessment alone, it doesn't give you anything aside from you knowing what you are. The benefits of it is to use the result. So then you know how you can improve structurally, strategically, and be able to take your cities more robustly in resilience investment. Once again, resilience is a long-term process. So it's a continuous learning and improvement process. There is no ending. Once you start, we recommend that you continue to do so then you build your endurance and be able to improve more and more in the future. The scorecard can be applied in different layers. So it's targeted to use for the local governments, but it has also been applied for the group of municipalities that living in the same region. For example, if you're in the same river basin, you can also join force with other municipalities to do the scorecard together. it actually has been applied also in some of the national government level to understand these 10 essential principles and be able to look at disaster risk reduction progress spreading across all different agency work. So it's pretty useful. And as I said many times, it's recommended it's used in the multi-stakeholder workshop. Make sure that you get the representation of different departments together. If you are not English speaker, it's recommended that you translate and localize a scorecard. Translation only might not help in some contexts, and we have experienced that because it's actually easier to contextualize it. So let's say if you have the word saying DRR strategies in your own country, you may have the legal framework that has a specific name of that DRR strategies. So you can actually input or embed those specific name of the plans in the translation of the scorecard. So the scorecard can become specific to your country and to your locality. And that will help to create a lot of the understanding from stakeholders who may not have been exposed to or understanding disaster risk reduction before. Also, it's recommended that you can do the some baseline desk review of the existing progress. We have this publication on the reference note that you can use to look at pre-workshop what kind of information and data you may need to run the scorecard. You can also run this in the workshop style, but of course, first determine why you are doing the scorecard assessment, identify who should be involved, and then set up the workshop. And you can have series of workshops. You can do orientation first, you can come into the scorecard assessment second, and then you can follow up by wrapping up doing the reassessment of the scorecard, looking at the results and use that in the action planning. Most important thing is that, as I said, use your result in the planning mechanism. So in many cases, we have seen the cities that align this process with their urban development planning process or DRR planning processes so that you can align the timing of when you need to have the action identified before putting in the DRR strategies for endorsement. And make sure your plan is endorsed, because if it doesn't get endorsed, it means nothing for implementation. So idea for applications, you can do different ways. You can run preliminary scorecard as an entry point. You can jump into the detailed scorecard. You can use also different addendums. And we have many case example of which I'm not going to go into detail here, because we'll be hearing directly from the cities that will be sharing experience. But I want to show you in the last few slides that here is how many questions there in each of the scorecards. So we have 47 questions in the preliminary scorecard, scoring between 0 to 3. We also have detailed scorecard, as the name suggests, 117 questions with scoring of 0 to 5. We also have different thematic areas of the scorecard. For example, the public health system resilience addendum is talking more on how to integrate public health issues and DRR. Cultural heritage also focusing on how to do risk reduction with the cultural heritage sector. Person with disabilities is talking about how to create meaningful engagement and accessibility of person with disabilities in DRR processes. We also have all these 4 additional addenda: climate, gender equality, disaster displacement, and multi-hazard early warning system scorecard launches from last year. And the question in the addendum is a bit lighter, so between like 20 to 30, except for some of the addendum that may go a little bit in depth. So you can pick and choose also to, maybe if you're interested in climate first, you can do climate. Or in some cases, we also have seen that you can handpick some of the indicator from the climate, mix with the preliminary and mix with others, depending on what you need for the cities. There are many more of the scorecard that is coming in the pipeline. And also many guidance available. And we can drop the links to all of these resources for your use. So that's pretty much it for this session on the use of the scorecard, and I hope that this helped to give you quite the comprehensive overview on what it is, how to use it, and be able to actually adopt it in your real life. So I'm going to be taking some of the questions. So Sunisa, if you have any burning questions that you have seen in the Q&A, can you help flag that, please?
Yes, from Christine, that asking about how has the uncertainty mentioned in the first presentation been incorporated into the resilience scorecard, including in the DR monitoring and evaluation.
Okay, so the uncertainties, I think this is part of understanding risk in general. So in the questions, particularly essential 2, when we are talking about the risk scenarios, this is when you have to detail out whether you have, what kind of understanding you have in terms of hazard. If it's building up on only the previous hazard, then one of the key gaps is that you have not yet taken into consideration of the future risk. If it's the climate resilience scorecard, that one has a specific questions that asking whether you have embedded the possibility of all the climate hazard and climate risk, and also the future scenarios. So you have to reflect whether your city actually have done some sort of understanding of these uncertainties that you are going to be meeting in the future. And yeah, so those are the questions already embedded in particularly essential 2 in terms of understanding risk for your reflection.
And there's also another questions on the 10 essential. So in the 10 essential under MCR, collaboration is given as an implicit one than spelling it explicitly, in spite of the fact that collaboration is critical to success in DRR. Was there any reason or thought process in having collaboration implicit?
I think it's actually explicit throughout the 10 essentials, especially if you go into the scorecard questions. If you look at the 10 essential as a start off, then of course it's talking about government institutions. It's also talking about the non-government societal institutions, community, citizens, private sector, and etc. And if you delve into the questions in the scorecard, you also have seen that the question when we are talking about planning or organizing, there will be questions to ask. And you have seen in the example in terms of coordination, in terms of creating the mechanism to create partnership. There are questions that ask for a specific sector. And that also implies very specifically that you need to engage different partners within this process. And I think in all of the presentation on the outset, we have shared very explicitly that disaster risk reduction is a shared responsibilities. And to do, for example, the scorecard assessment, you have to bring in the system of systems. So it's a prerequisite before you actually go into the exercise. And if you don't have partnership or collaboration, and you go right into doing the scorecard exercise, then you will find that you'll get stuck because you will not be able to answer a lot of the questions that your local government departments are not dealing with. Let's say if I'm working for disaster management office and there is a question on transportation, right? I might not have the best knowledge. If there's a question on education system, I also might not be able to answer the question. So in order to have the robust assessment process, you have to bring in all of these partners and collaboration in. Yes.
And there's also another question that I think is also useful. That how do we manage resource expectations by local government authorities who may not have their budget lines? Are there funding opportunities to help for local government authorities to support their DR plans?
Oh, I think that's it's a question that actually should be for the local governments too. You know? So the fact that you don't have the budget to work on DRR, it doesn't mean that your local government doesn't have budget to operate, right? But it's also the questions of how the budget has been allocated within the local governments for implementation. So that there goes whether your city local government actually had put disaster risk reduction as a priorities. So by not creating the awareness or understanding of this, of course, disaster risk reduction will not be flagging as one of the areas that will get funding. So there's a lot of work for all of the agencies working in disaster risk reduction to echo the importance of doing this. Secondly, it's not easy to have the standalone disaster risk reduction funding, because you will see that a lot of disaster risk reduction activities should be embedded in the development sectors. So it's very important to actually get the funding also through the sectoral departments, whether those sectoral, let's say we had the question about transportation, road construction. Do these road construction people understand how they can build the road that also help to prevent the flood? It doesn't get built in the flood prone area or create increase the risk of the city being flood, right? So those kind of awareness raising, collaboration, make sure that one investment in your development projects has multiple benefits. That's very important. And I think it's involved a lot of dialogue, involve the mayor's office commitment. It's involved long-term planning, because of course a lot of disaster risk reduction is not attractive because the result might come in a long-term perspective and it's not so flashy, especially for politicians who are serving only short term. So it's also it's very important that you create the demand among the citizens that you want the local governments to invest in all of this, so that it become embedded as a priority of the local governments and be able to allocate more budget, right? And of course, there are also external budget from other sources for development agencies. And there, while local governments have limited access, we also see that there are also sometimes it's difficult for local government to access because of sometimes blockage with the national government's legal framework. So that also needs the national government to actually comes to unlock some of the legal framework or creating environment for local government to be able to access those funding. And also the local governments have to demonstrate this evidence and robust justification of why you need the funding, because while you can apply to the donor support, a lot of the donor feels that cities who request for the support doesn't have clear justification of why they need the funding. Of course, everyone can ask for money, but if 10 people come to ask for the money and they can only give one, they will give to the one that have clear justification on why you need this and how much, right? So the city also has a responsibility to understand and be able to articulate why you need this the most, and be able to present that to the donor. And this process of understanding the 10 essential, creating the partnership, creating the priorities in DRR, creating the evidence through the scorecard assessment, and so is initial steps for the cities to be able to get to that point of making justification for the budget request. Yes. So I guess that's probably good for this sessions, and I'll be taking some answers of some of the Q&A in writing later on. But with the interest of time, let's move on to taking a short break. Maybe if possible, if we can take 10 minutes break, and we'll come back at around in about 10 minutes time. We're going to put the clock up a bit later. And in the next sessions after the break, we'll have a presentation on the development of the action plan. So how you integrate this scorecard assessment into the planning mechanism. And also the exciting part is to hear the direct stories from the cities that have taken this route of planning and improving their resilience investment before. So with that said, let's have a break for 10 minutes, and we'll come back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to the sessions. I hope you were able to stretch a little bit during the 10 minutes break. I hope you are all back and ready for moving forward. So in the first part of the training, we already have heard the introduction to disaster risk reduction, urban resilience, the concept on the 10 essentials, and the use of the scorecard in the planning mechanism. Now, moving onward, we're going to have a sessions to focus on the development of the local disaster risk reduction plans, and particularly in we're using the scorecard as the input to it. And so I would like to pass the floor back to Sunisa for her presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Mike. So then let's look it at so what we are going to do and or what we plan or what we have to do after like we finish the scorecard assessment. So from those that I'll bring back this cycle again, that so we already understand how we are organizing the priority for and preparing for disaster risk reduction using 10 essential. We have better understanding on how we can identify gap and priority using the scorecard, which is one of the tools. And for local government to choose, actually, there's also many tools from different agencies that working with the local government to localize DRR. So then after that, so we have the gap, we identify the gap in place. So it's time for us to develop the DRR strategy and action planning. And then we get that plan endorsed for implementations, and then followed by we do the monitoring and evaluations. So my session will focusing on these two topics. So let's start with the first one. So what is the local DRR strategy and DRR action plan? So when we developing the DRR strategy, each country have different mechanisms. So then when we're looking at the definition of local DRR strategy, so mostly it's a long-term perspective that you identify visions, you identify guiding principle, you identify priority area, that it's wider scope and it can be implemented for multiple years. But then when we developing the local DRR strategy, so we also need to have the identify action. You need to develop, we need to develop the mechanism on how we can implement those strategy. So this called local DRR action plan. So under this plan, you identify the details on roles and responsibilities, to identify resource mobilization, and also to allocate, most importantly, like how you allocate the budget. So in summary, so a strategy that it will giving a long-term visions on what cities want to achieve, while the local DRR action plan give you a short-term detail for some specific implementations. And local DRR action plans is often part of the DRR strategy. So when we move to the how local DRR strategy look like, first of all, it like the good local DRR strategy must be aligned with the national plan. And it has to like for it can be follow like the 10 elements for Sendai framework alignment. For example, that you need to have like the identify strategic vision and goals, and it's also need to have the priority for action that align with the Sendai framework, and also like the guiding principle, how this DRR strategy link with Sendai framework, and also link with other aspects, for example, climate change, or for example, the poverty reductions, or maybe how it's linked with other framework like SDG or Paris Agreement. And also like you need to have like the monitoring tools, like the time scale of the DRR strategy or any mechanism to follow up. And then looking at like the table of contents of the DRR strategy, like first of all, like it really need to have like a preface, like the executive summary, and then like the introduction, why we need to have the DRR strategy, what legal framework that link with this strategy, And then it follow with the situation analysis, the current situation and trend, the challenge that we have, what kind of risks that we have in our country, in our city. And under this section, you may consider to apply the result from the scorecard assessment that might explain in previous sessions as a baseline data for the current situation of your DRR strategy. So then you identify the objective missions, where we want to be or what we want to achieve. And then we also like follow by the overall action planning, the implementations, and also most importantly, the monitoring and evaluation tools. So we can say that a good planning will lead to a good implementations and also the financial plan for implementation. So just to give you another example, so those are the DRR strategy, but how the DRR action plan look like. So again, the action plan is also need to align with the country framework, but this also the example of the template for the DRR action planning. So here the example showing like strategic outcome, identify target and goals. You need to identify result, impact indicator, and then you see below like the objective, outcome indicator. But it can also be another template for the DRR action plan. It's also the same, but it's come with different context. It's depend on like your DRR strategy that or what you want to achieve. So that is what DRR action plan, DRR strategy look like. So this is an example from the city when develop the DRR action plan. So first is the sample from Lisbon that developed resilience action plan. So they did scorecard and then they plan that, well, they want to increase the scoring for essential tool that focusing on risk scenario. They want to increase the financial capacity on risk assessment. They want to focus on the institution capacity and the disaster response. So these are the 4 areas that they want to develop the 4-year DRR strategies, which is based on the 10 essential and based on the scorecard result. So then they develop into like under each essential, and then like under each essential here. So they identify gap using the scorecard assessment, and then they grouping the gap under each essential into the action item. And then they grouping the action item again, because some action item, for example, the capacity building, it can also reply or link with different essential, or maybe there's some essential that like the last exercise that you put in the words bubble, like the bubble that under previous session. So that is also like the action item that you might grouping into different projects. And then from the sample of Lisbon, so they also put into 6 projects and then identify the timeline sequence. So this is the how one project look like as a sample. Or some sample from Gift City. I also noticed there's a representative from Gift City joining here. So Gift City use a scorecard, the both preliminary versions and also detailed versions, and then the city can come up with 7 projects, including the resilient action plan that they might, for example, they focus on how they integrating their framework, how they do the DRR awareness raising, or they plan to do, for example, resilient recovery or rebuilding. And also similar to Mauritius, that they also use the scorecard with the multi-stakeholder involvement, because, well, if you remember that building resilience is not only one agency roles and responsibilities, but also different stakeholders bringing in, working together, and then develop and provide input to develop the like the priorities. And from here, this city can also like successfully identify the 76 objectives like under 4 strategic priorities. Actually, their city also firstly join MCR as a city state B, and then now move to city state C after they adopt those plan like to implementation. Or scorecard assessments and how to developing plan can also helping some city, for example, Sarodaya in Nepal, that have systematic way of DRR and building resilience. So for Sarodaya municipality, before like the city working on ad hoc basis on how to reduce risks. But after using scorecard, it can also help city can prioritize and put in time frame on like the action plan and also the project. Or similar to this, cities in America that they were using the scorecard assessment, grouping the action item, and also successfully develop the foresighted pillar. And for their cities, they also like using multi-stakeholder involvement. And last but not least, example from Makati, Philippines, that you might heard more in detail on how these cities using scorecard and how develop like the DR action planning. So the more the important note for DR development of DR strategy and DR action plan is that there is no hard set outline or the fixed structure for this for the DR action plan or DR strategy. But it is very important that when you develop this action plan, when you develop the strategy, it really need to get endorsed for implementation. So, but however, like sometimes, like if some local government, if you don't have the legal framework for DRR, you can also build a standalone DR strategy or action plan. But in order to build that, sometimes it may not secure funding for implementation. So then there's also an option that you can link this DR action plan into or integrated to the broader development planning. For example, you might have like the local development plan. So you may be embedded like this GRSIT into those plans, so that this can ensure that the budget allocations and also long-term sustainability. So because typically like the urban development plan is like the overall plan, the overarching plan that it has to encompass all key elements. So then like the risk element should be included in those like the urban development plan. So this is some useful resources that you might want to learn more on the DI, how to develop like DI action planning or the DIR strategy. So then let's move to monitoring and evaluation for local DR strategy and plan. So from from this picture, so what do you see? Like you see like as a project, is it going good or anything that you might be concerned? So like from this, you see that even though like it's feel like a peaceful river, but actually it's waterfall coming to like very close by. So then you need to know that it's also similar to project implementation, that you need to know that if you are going to the right direction or not. And M&E or monitoring and evaluation can help you not to fall to this waterfall, right? And then another picture that for you to share, like you see here, what's wrong with this picture? They are fixing the pavement, right? They're putting the pole here. They are almost done with the work. But actually, if you notice, there is a van here. How can they get the van out, right? Because they already put the pole here. So it's impossible to get the van out. So it's similar to the concept of monitoring, because monitoring will help you to track that if you're doing the right step. And like both monitoring and evaluation will help you to ensure that you can get the van out. So moving to the concept of monitoring. So from here, just give you like a very simple word that monitoring is like you do the health checkup for the project implementation. Because well, it will help you to understand that you can identify and also you fix the problem early. So you can have time for correction before it's too late. Like that ship, right, going to the waterfall. And it's also helping you to continue improvement. So monitoring to ensure that the what you are doing is going to the right direction or not. And without monitoring, so it's too late for you to adjust the plan, right? And then, so what is evaluations? How it's different between monitoring and evaluation? So monitoring is doing while project is implementing, but evaluations we're doing at the end of the project. So what you achieve, so why we need to evaluate. First of all, we need to assess like if it works or what didn't work. And also you can learning for improvement that the project that you have done. So maybe some work or maybe some area that you might be considered for the next project in the future. And it's also measuring impact that to helping you that what make your how project actually made the difference. So the evaluation is not about looking back on what with regrets, oh, we should have done that before, but it's about moving forward, like with wisdom. So when we comparing between monitoring and evaluations, you can see from here that monitoring is also work doing on the daily basis or doing on weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis. But evaluation, you do various, like you can do like since the beginning, or you can do and you do at the end of the project. And monitoring can be done by the people directly working or implementing the project, but looking at the evaluation, it best like to conduct by the outsider, to conduct by the independent outsider who can have like who can be impartial in consulting with city council staff or implementator. So evaluation, so monitoring has to be the good monitoring need to have a good indicator, right? So that you can measure on what you have done. Is it good, or maybe any improvement is needed? So then what is the indicator? So indicator is written here that the thing that helping you knows that if change are happening or have happened. So then the characteristic of indicator, first of all, it's like a GPS. It's help us that we are going to the right track or not. But the indicator, it really need to have something that can measurable, like what's going to change, or it's put in figure. It's also helping you to say that, well, your project is successful or not. So for the indicator, let's just put in this way, like SMART indicator, what it look like. SMART, S means specific, that you need to clearly define on what's your project need what's need for improvement, right? And then it really need to have so like measurable, for example, like it include like how you to track the progress. For example, it can be in number, it can be in percentage, or it can be in any data that you can track the progress of your project. And it has to have the A or assignable, who is doing, who is responsible, because accountability is a key. And then looking at the realistic, so you need to ensure that the goals should be pushed to push limit, but it's still achievable. And then last but not least is time related. You need to have time frame, you need to set deadline for achieving the goal to ensure that like it's on track or not. So then let's just looking at the sample, because the indicator, it can be in many levels. From here, it can be starting from outcome level. It's very high level change that you want to see. So from the SMART indicator here, from the sample, there's identify the timeline, identify the responsible person, right? And also identify like the area that you want to achieve. Or looking down at the outcome indicator. Also, the outcome indicator, it can be in different outcomes. So this is just a sample, and it's showing that based on the SMART indicator, it's also identify the responsible person, identify the time frame, and also realistic or not, right? Or narrow down into activity level. So the indicator of the activity level, so how you implement those, you need to do some activity. So as a SMART indicator here, it's showing that numbers of workshop, right, to arrange, and also the time frame by 2025, and also the responsible agencies by local GIM committee, for example. So then when we bringing all together, so this is also the example, like the indicator for DRR strategies, then you can see that you have a series of indicators more for monitoring the progress, and also for keeping the track of your logical framework. So for the result and impact area, so that can be like a several outcome or several objective, or for each outcome or objective, that you can also see the several activity inside. But this is just a sample. It also can be adjusted to fit your country framework. So then last but not least, for M&E, like monitoring and evaluation your DRR strategy. First of all, M&E is not for reporting requirement, but actually the developing M&E strategy, this is for DRR strategies. And you really need to identify role, you identify the timeline, and it's also like a tools for better decision making, for stronger DRR strategies, and also to make sure that it's have a real impact for on the community or not. So then just to summary that the M&E is not about the tracking process again, and it's about the improving strategy to engaging stakeholders, and also ensure that the resilience building are sustained. So this is the end of my sessions, like on the DRR strategy, DRR action plan, monitoring and evaluations, and also how to identify the indicator. So any questions, anything that we can, yeah, so like, I think we have some time, right?
Yeah, I'm also looking through the questions, and there are not yet any specific questions for this. Let me just browse through one more time. Yeah, I think so far it's under control. So I think we can move forward to give way to hearing the experience from the cities, and we can come back to any questions thereafter. And there are some questions that we can respond in the writing, so we'll keep responding that in the Q&A box. So with that said, thank you so much, Sunisa. So you might have now a better picture of how all of the section links together. You understand the concept of what disaster risk reduction is. You understand the 10 essentials. You understand the scorecard, the framework, how to use it. You understand the methodologies of coming to the result assessment. And there was a questions about how flexible for you to adjust the language of the scorecard. As I said, like you can actually adjust it however you wish that would make the best understanding among the people that you're applying the scorecard to. So please do go ahead with that. And then you have seen also moving forward from the scorecard results into the planning and what the composition of the good plan should look like. You need to have the robust background of why you're having the plan. You should have the justification of why you come up with the priorities area. You would be able to identify some actions and collaboration, setting the monitoring and evaluation framework to be able to track the progress. And of course, like you can come back into after implementation, reevaluate, and then come back to do the reassessment and moving onward. Now, in the next session is an exciting part, as I said, that we will get 3 cities who have had the experience of doing all of this. That is, they are willing to be sharing the experience with us. And we have 3 cities, Makati cities, Incheon cities, and Suji cities. And I see all 3 speakers already lining up to share with you the experience. But first up in the line, I would like to invite our dear friend Makati city. So Liza Bell Ramos, if you can turn the screen on. Yes, so good afternoon, Liza. So if you might have seen Liza before from many of the platform because she has been a long-term friend in disaster risk reduction and urban resilience for over a decade and has built a lot of expertise and now a licensed urban planner. And she works with the city, the disaster risk reduction and management office of Makati City. And she has more than 15 years of experience in this in this field. Makati City is also the part of the CityNet disaster cluster lead. And so Liza has been also speaking about the experience of Makati, not only within the Philippines, but also with other cities, and have been engaging many cities in the MCR 2030 and sharing experience. So I would like to give the floor to her, but I give you the warning that Lisa is full of energy. So you should keep up your energy to follow her presentation, but we're really always excited to hear the stories from her. So I'll pass the floor to you, Liza, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ma. It's nice. Always nice seeing you and always nice, of course, speaking and representing Makati in these kinds of training courses. So good day to our participants. Pretty much, Sunisa has explained a lot of the things, even the process that we've underwent in our resilience building. So my presentation is basically just, just to provide you supplementary information on how a particular city has actually applied the disaster resilience scorecard and how we have actually institutionalized the process in the city from way back. So yes, my presentation is entitled Journey Towards #Resilient Makati. And the MCR 2030 and the Disaster Resilience Scorecard has actually played a big role, a significant role on where we are right now. Let's go to the next slide, please. There you go. It might have been mentioned already that Makati is one of the few resilience hubs in the Asia-Pacific region. We're actually second to Incheon when declared, and we're just very happy that this recognition has give us, has made us reach new heights, greater heights when it comes to resilience building, because now, as what Mai has mentioned, it's not just about building the resilience of Makati, but also contributing in building the resilience of many other cities, not only in the Philippines, but all over. So just to give you an idea, or just to give an overview of how far we've reached already at this point and why we became a resilience hub, let me show you a very short audiovisual presentation.
Makati City, at the heart of progress, innovation, and resilience. For over a decade, Makati has championed disaster risk reduction, building safer and stronger communities. As part of the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative, Makati has taken decisive steps to ensure its Makatizen's and systems are equipped to face both current and future risks. This journey is built on a decade of experience, collaboration, and continuous improvement. Through the MCR 2030 initiative, Makati has increased awareness and action towards disaster risk reduction, forged strong partnerships with government, private sector, and civil society. Facilitated training, webinars, and workshops to build resilience capacity. Develop critical tools and resources for cities worldwide. Foster the global network of cities committed to enhancing resilience. We've conducted comprehensive risk assessment, shared best practices, and provided technical assistance to cities developing their resilience strategies. Over the past decade, Makati has made great strides in its journey to resilience, largely aided by MCR tools made accessible to us. We are eager to pay it forward by optimizing the opportunity to share our knowledge, best practices, and resources with other cities so that together we can attain the highest level of resilience come 2030. As we look to the future, we invite you to join us on this journey of resilience. Together, we can build stronger, safer cities across the globe. Makati City, making resilience as a way of life.
There you go. So that's basically like a quick snapshot, quick overview of the many things that we've been doing in promoting resilience building through the MCR 2030 campaign. And if you will ask me how were we able to do that, then let me proceed with my presentation. As I have said, we have institutionalized the process of the use of the MCR 2030. No? So earlier, Sunisa was talking about aligning with the national strategy, aligning with the Sendai framework. And in our case, we've done that for our existing disaster risk reduction and management plan. So here in the Philippines, we are required, all local governments are required to have a local disaster risk reduction and management plan. And while Sunisa earlier has shared that there's, you know, a prescribed outline or table of contents for a DRR strategy in the Philippines, there's also a prescribed outline by our national government, particularly the Office of Civil Defense. But in our case, in the case of Makati, our strategy has been mixing up or harmonizing different tools, different outlines, different tables of contents in order to come up with a more responsive DRR strategy that is contextualized with the needs of our city. No? So if I may just please request to just blow up the linkage with the National DRRM Plan and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. There you go. So the Makati Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan actually has this contents. No? So we have our goals, we have our outcomes, our outputs, and our activities. And as you can see on the arrows, the goals and objectives and even the outcomes of the National DRRM Plan has actually been aligned with the outcomes of the city. It's the same thing with the outputs and the activities. But we did not stop from there. We made sure that our disaster reduction and management plan, once fully implemented, can actually contribute to the dream of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. And very straightforward, the global targets, there are seven targets of the Sendai Framework. 4 of these have actually been used as the actual goals of the Makati DRRM plan. So the first 4 targets of the Sendai Framework are actually the same 4 goals of our DRRM plan. And then the 10 essentials that we're talking about in this training course, so the 10 essentials for making cities resilient, is actually the parts of where in the DRRM plan of Makati is incorporated in the outcomes and the outputs, no, and even the activities. So they're all there. And then just to complete the 7 targets, 6 and 7 of the Sunday framework, these are incorporated as well in these 3 main parts of the DRRM plan. So we can just say that if there's 100% implementation of our DRRM plan, we're not only contributing to the plan of the national government, but we're also contributing to the expected targets and the outputs of the Sunday framework for disaster risk reduction. So that's how committed Makati is in building resilience of the city. And again, because of this resilience hub recognition is, of course, bringing this experiences and influencing as well other cities to do the same. Next slide, please. So we've also been talking about, Sunisa has been talking about monitoring and evaluation. So that's also one aspect where we have institutionalized the use of the disaster resilience scorecard. Mai has mentioned that we've been using it since the very first launch of the 10 essentials in 2010. Imagine that. That was when it was launched. It's just 10 essentials, no disaster resilience scorecard at that time. And it's really just 10. We're not talking about the indicators for each essential, no? So that's just 10. At that time, we were already using it annually. So later I will show you not necessarily the progress on an annual basis, but at least the latest that we've used or accomplished the disaster resilience scorecard. Anyway, going back to the monitoring and evaluation, the DRRM plan of Makati has a supplemental document or plan, which is the results-based monitoring and evaluation tool, no? And this RBME was actually crafted with the use of the indicators of the disaster resilience scorecard, the indicators of the different national assessments related to disaster risk reduction, and the indicators of the local development plan of Makati. So we've put them all together and come up with a more strategic way of approaching our monitoring and evaluation framework. And again, since there are already indicators from the disaster resilience scorecard, every time that we check on our progress, every time that we monitor and evaluate our progress or the DRRM plan's progress, we are actually using the indicators of the disaster resilience scorecard, amongst others. And if I may just give you an idea of this very basic visuals of the results-based monitoring and evaluation, whenever we, of course, as we all know, no, the purpose of the monitoring and evaluation, as Anissa has mentioned, is for us to be able to move forward, identify programs and projects that can address the gaps from our baseline, no, from where we left off. And that's basically the idea. In the Philippines, particularly in Makati, we have different like frequent submission of outcome monitoring reports. No? So we have quarterly, we have annual outcome. And since again, in the results-based monitoring and evaluation of the DRRM plan, the indicators of the resilience scorecard have been integrated. So whenever we submit our quarterly and annual outcome monitoring reports to our planning office, all of those are being considered. And this particular annual and quarterly outcome monitoring reports are actually inputs to the 3-year outcome evaluation report that we are also submitting to our planning office. So what we're just saying is that even if, for example, even if the monitoring and evaluation tool of Makati has just focused on the DRRM plan implementation, the results of our monitoring and evaluation actually are being elevated to the city as part of our development strategy. So that's basically the idea behind this particular slide. Let me proceed to my next slide. So as I've said, we've been using the disaster resilience scorecard, and the last time that we've actually used this like scorecard per se, before we have actually integrated the indicators of scorecard in our results-based monitoring and evaluation tool, was in 2017. And just as how it was explained, no, in accomplishing the scorecard, we followed the same process, no, from stakeholder identification. We've identified private and public stakeholders We put them in one workshop. And it's no easy feat. I mind you, it's no easy feat. It's hard to put together competing private organizations. For example, in the case of the Philippines, private telecommunication companies who are competing, and put them together in one workshop. But we were able to do that, with a lot of one-on-one sessions, discussions, etc. And so because of that, we were able to really get like an overall picture of where the city is. So what I'm just saying is that whenever we accomplish the scorecard, it's really important that we invite different stakeholders for us to be able to really assess where we are in terms of our resilience building. It's not enough that only the city government offices and departments are part of the accomplishment of this particular tool. No, so in our case, we're able to invite different stakeholders, both from public and private sector. And as you can see, for the 10 essentials, more than the quantified value, the average, because we averaged the rating per essential, more than that, we were able to really identify the actual programs that would address the issues and gaps that were identified because of our assessment of the disaster resilience scorecard. And that's what you can see on the third column of this table. And these programs, almost similar with the presentation for Lisbon and the other cities that were presented earlier by Sunisa, we were able to identify programs per essential, but at the same time, there are some programs here that actually contribute to two or more essentials. So that's basically the idea. And these programs that you can see on the third column, these are exactly the same priority programs that you can see, that you will be able to see in our Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan 2019 to 2030. Exactly the same. Mainly because the scorecard really influenced how we were able to come up with our programs. So that's how powerful the scorecard is. Next slide, please. So because of this, because of our use of the disaster resilience scorecard, this is basically the snapshot of our DRRM plan. So as I've said, the 4 goals of the DRRM plan are exactly the same. First 4 targets of the Sendai framework. We were able to identify the outcomes and align, or at least identify which of the outcomes will contribute to a particular goal. And similarly, we did that for our priority programs, which of the priority programs will actually contribute to a particular outcome. And as you can see, similar again with the samples provided to us earlier, many of the programs that we were able to identify can actually contribute to multiple outcomes, which can actually contribute to 2, 3, or 4 of our goals in the DRRM plan of Makati. Next slide, please. And because of this, again, more than a decade worth of learning from the Making Cities Resilient campaign, that was MCR before and now MCR 2030, we can really say that DRRM should really be mainstreamed. So in our case, the national government's prescription in the development of the disaster reduction and management plan actually should be on a per thematic area basis, meaning on each cycle of disaster risk management, from prevention and mitigation to preparedness to response and relief to recovery and rehabilitation, we should have programs for those thematic areas. But in the case of Makati, what we did is to do it on a sectoral perspective. So we do have programs for economic resilience. We do have programs for environmental resilience. We have programs for infrastructure resilience. We have programs for community resilience. And these are basically similar with the idea of the 10 essentials to really capture different sectors of the society in order for us to really mainstream DRRM. And this is also key in making sure that the departments and offices who are responsible for implementing the programs and projects of the DRRM plan will not take this as an additional work, but really part of the regular mandate of their respective offices. So that's one beauty in really mainstreaming DRRM into the developmental sectors, no? And the other one is that we've always been saying that resilience is really everybody's business. But how is it really when it comes to really understanding the level of resilience or progress of a particular city? So in our case, as I've said, we were able to really discuss one-on-one with different private sectors who have, really great, have huge stake in the resilience building of the city. We talked with real estate developers in the city. We were able to talk to fuel companies. We're able to talk to telecommunication companies, energy providers. So, and one by one, we talk to them so that we can, they'll be on board. And as we continue those series of activities, we were able to encourage them to really join the workshops, provide their inputs, provide their scores in the scorecard, etc. And that we can say that really resilience has become everybody's business in Makati. In fact, even our mayor has been saying that they were, coming up to us and knock on our doors for some projects to do resilience building. So that's how it really is. And for Makati, it's not anymore a buzzword, but it is really a principle that we are executing and implementing. Next slide, please. So all of this, again, because we've learned a lot of this, because of our more than a decade of experience in the MCR and now the MCR 2030 campaign, this as a resilience hub, these are what we have been committing. Now, since we were recognized in 2022, it is our third year now as a resilience hub, and we are committing to continuously promote MCR. Reason why in our audiovisual presentation, there are a lot of cities, a lot of engagements already in promoting the MCR 2030 and the use of the disaster resilience scorecard. And we've been forging different city-to-city cooperation for DRR. One was with Yokohama, where in the Yokohama Fire Bureau taught our first responders, our search and rescue here in the city. And after the search and rescue of Makati have been trained by the Yokohama Fire Bureau, Makati Search and Rescue now is teaching Lalitpur metropolitan cities in Nepal first responders. So we were there last year, and we were actually also able to provide this same course, resilience building course, to 14 municipalities in Nepal, attended mostly by their mayors. So we were able to give them a run through of how the disaster resilience scorecard should be accomplished, and that's part of our commitment as a hub. And then in one frame of our audiovisual presentation, we have also mentioned about the development of the Makati DRM Knowledge Portal. So to make our services closer and more accessible to the different parts of the world, basically different parts of the world, we have developed a knowledge portal. No, it's actually still in the infancy stage. We're still testing this portal, and we'll make it available hopefully before the middle of this year. We can make it useful for everybody. And then lastly is the integration of the MCR 2030 in our Makati DRRM Academy. So we have the DRRM Academy of Makati is actually the official training platform for DRR and climate change adaptation. So from the first responders training, to community resilience, to public health, to even the accomplishment of the disaster resilience scorecard. These are all parts of our commitment as a hub, and we continue to provide these services to many cities globally. Next slide, please. And if in case you are interested, I saw one question earlier in our Q&A asking if there are a way to have this city to city or just sharing of experiences, then maybe this is the right slide for you. We've been, as I've said, we've been offering our assistance in local resilience building, primarily in assessing using the disaster resilience scorecard or developing a resilience strategy. So if you are interested, just please access the link or use the QR code so that we can schedule for different activities for us. And lastly, I can see you, I think it's time's up, but this is my last slide. We're doing this because at the end of the day, we really want our Makatizens to really embrace this vision of helping themselves and help others in times of disasters. And this same vision, we want to also emulate to the different parts of the world, because at the end of the day, resilience really is everybody's business. And it's really something, and for us to be able to do that, every member of our society should be able to really embrace the real essence of resilience building. That's all. Thank you so much. Should you have further inquiries, we're leaving our contact information here, or maybe go through, of course, UNDRR to get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liza. And I didn't say beyond the fact that you are very energetic in the presentation. Very thank you. And you'll see, like, this is one of the clear example from the Resilience Hub of and how the face that resilience is a long-term process is. Right? Makati City has reached this point because of starting over 10 years ago, and you continue to demonstrate very good practices there. There are loads of questions for you, so I'm going to pick only a few, and I would ask you to help to respond in writing if you can later on. But I think one question that would be also interesting for many is that whether which part of the project cycle process, or planning process, that you have applied the scorecard?
Actually, it's more the higher level, like strategic planning process, more than the project process. As I've said, we in our approach in resilience building, we're programmatic. So we make sure that the gaps that were identified in the scorecard have a corresponding program, and that program stands for 2019 to 2030, because that's a priority program in our DRRM plan, which has a planning horizon of 2019 to 2030. So that's basically the idea. If you will take a look at the annual slices of our investment program, those are the same programs that we're continuously providing projects and activities on. And again, because of that, every time that we have this annual monitoring or annual review of these programs and projects, again, we're going back to the indicators in our results-based monitoring and evaluation, where the scorecard indicators have been incorporated. And so in short, it's really on the higher level of strategic planning more than the project cycle.
Okay, you touch upon that word, monitoring. There is also the question asking that one of the biggest challenges in monitoring in big city is the complexity of the exercise, that you need to engage a lot of people. Do you have any tips of how Makati has been doing that?
The thing in Makati is that, as I've said, monitoring and evaluation is really an important aspect of our, like, not only for our office, but Makati in general, Makati City Government in general. So in our case, we do annual program review and planning workshop. That's part of our commitment to make sure that we are monitoring our activities. So in that particular activity, we invite the different members of the DRRM Council. In the Philippines, the DRRM Council is composed of different departments and offices within the city government, plus members from the civil society organization and the private sector. So they are part of the annual program review, annual monitoring of our programs. No? And again, since the priority programs, the indicators, the monitoring and evaluation are institutionalized, all of these are being reviewed annually. So I think it takes a lot of commitment. It also takes a little bit of funding, because you have to really gather them in one place. But that's part of the commitment, I would say. Because if you wouldn't be able to, fund a particular activity that would really benefit your organization, then it will just be out there. It will just be in the air and will just fly anywhere, everywhere. So I think the thing is that, again, it's about your commitment. The good thing in the Philippines is that we have permanent office for disaster risk reduction and management. So it's easier for us to really, have like a focal office to really focus on working on DRR and resilience building, and doing the monitoring and evaluation thing. But if I may also add, sometimes it's not always about the formal platform for monitoring and evaluation, because there are also some, for example, meetings, consultations with different private sector. You can also make use of those activities to be able to get insights or like progress from your partner. So relationship building is another thing.
relationship building, that is. There's one other question, last question for you before I turn to the next presenter. It's very specific to Makati, because Makati is quite unique in the Philippines too, that like 1/3 or so of the land is actually owned by private sector also. So you must have to deal a lot with the private sector. Do you find it challenging? What is your tip of how you engage with the private sector? If they're actually engaged in the process, can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yes, the good thing with Makati is that we will not be the financial center of the Philippines if we don't have a very good working relationship with the business sector. So it's not really that challenging because the relationship has been built early on, even prior to the establishment of our office. So what we just need to do is just to make sure that we have regular activities with them. May it be with just like a drill, or may it be like consultations, maybe. So the thing with the private sector is that there has to be a sustained effort of engaging them in whatever form. It doesn't always have to be one big event, one big workshop, then make them a partner, co-organizer. It will not work that way. It should be a sustained effort of making them part of your activities. May not be always part of the planning works, but sometimes in the implementation of the programs and projects, because sometimes, private sector does not have that much interest in making time for planning or whatever, but make sure that at least bits and pieces of activities. So in our case, it was not that hard, though again the harder part would be sustaining the relationship.
Yeah, so actually the local government has to really take the lead, right? Make sure that everyone understand benefits, engage, and also make sure that it's a long-term process. It's not a one-shot thing, right? Thank you so much, Liza. So I'll thank you for now. We may interrupt you a little bit later, but there are some more questions for you in the Q&A if you can attend to them. Thanks. So we're going to move to the next presenter in parallel to Makati Cities. We have another Making MCR 2030 Resilience Hub, the first one in Asia Pacific from the Republic of Korea. So I would like to turn the spotlight to our colleagues in Incheon Metropolitan City. With us here is Ms. Sung An, or Susan. She is a Deputy Director of Incheon Metropolitan City, and she has been working very closely with UNDRR for many years now and has supported a lot of the activities in MCR 2030 and also as a Resilience Hub. So Susan, if we can ask you to turn on the video, and I will pass the floor to you. Yes, we can see you well. So please warmly welcome Susan, and the floor is yours. Yes, Susan, you may start the presentation. You can
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you see my presentation, PPT?
Yes, we can see this presentation, we can hear you, and we can see you well.
Yes. And good afternoon. I'm very happy to have an opportunity to give a presentation on behalf of the Resilience Hub Incheon. My name's An Sung-ah in Korean. English name is Sujan. I'm public officer of Incheon Metropolitan City. I had worked for UNDRR Incheon office for 3 years, from 2022 to 2024, as a seconded officer. Well, I'd like to give you a presentation from now on. Here's the brief outline of my presentation. The presentation has 5 main sections. Then let's take a brief look at Incheon. Incheon Metropolitan City is the 3rd largest city in the Republic of Korea. The important thing is that there is an international airport in Incheon. So Incheon serves as the gateway to global market with its international airport. Well, let's take a look at the general status of Incheon. The population of Incheon is about 3 million. And the 2024 budget is roughly $11 billion, as you can see on the screen. Incheon City has an organized city plan for disaster risk reduction and strong network between government and citizens. But Korea is not exception for climate change. For example, every summer Korean people suffer from prolonged heat wave and typhoons. Incheon experiences a variety of disasters, so Incheon City is making significant efforts to prepare for and respond to them. Secondly, let me tell you about the history of MCR and Resilience Hub Incheon. UNDRR Incheon office was established in 2010 in Songdo, and the city joined MCR campaign in 2013. Dedicated to international cooperation, city was designated as the 6th resilience hub city in the world in 2021. Currently, Incheon City is well known as the smart city around the world. As a resilience hub, Incheon is the first smart city in Korea to manage disasters, traffic, crime, fire, and environmental pollution 24 hours a day. Incheon is applying advanced technologies such as intelligent CCTVs and IoT sensors throughout the city. As a resilience hub, Incheon has invited and cooperated with international organizations such as JCF, World Bank, National Museum of World Writing System, and many more. Thirdly, its journey to a resilient city. As you can see on the screen, Incheon has the governance system on disaster risk reduction. The disaster control system of Incheon City consists of headquarters of a city, 2 counties, and 8 district offices. When it comes to disaster management command system, there are fire departments, police agency, office of education, electric power corporation, etc. We are also working together with the civil society organizations and NGOs such as the Korean Red Cross, volunteer institutions and organizations, and so on. The city's annual safety management plan, supported by dedicated annual budget, defines the modality of the disaster management system, key measures, investment plans, and institutional capacity building needs for the year. A smart disaster information system allows real-time data collection and fast dissemination of disaster information across key departments and emergency response actors of the city through interconnected ICT systems. The second essential is risk data analysis and application. In order to prepare for large-scale and complex disasters, Incheon City analyze past, present, and future disaster risks by commissioning City Basic Plan in 2023. City also analyzed big data to identify hotspots of vulnerability in relation to specific risks, such as heat waves, torrential floods, and to inform the design and implementation of targeted preventive measures. In 2022, City established the Safe City Research Center in Incheon Institute in accordance with the Incheon Metropolitan City Disaster and Safety Management Basic Ordinance. As a think tank, that contribute to creating international safety city. Next, there was a major project for disaster risk reduction in Incheon 2024. Looking at the budget of a project, we invested $7 million in expanding CCTV. We spent $121 million on rainwater storage facilities. For citizen safety insurance, we used $329,000. Last year's disaster prevention budget was about $436 million, which accounts for about 4% of the city's total budget. The central government has the storm and flood insurance against the disasters. At the local government level, city has made a budget to implement citizen safety insurance policies since 2018 to provide relief and to compensate for the damage in the event of various disasters and accidents. Next is Essential 4, which is development and design for urban resilience. Located on the west coast of Republic of Korea, Songdo International City is a smart city built as an extension of Incheon City by reclaiming the sea. During the typhoon season, the city is exposed to heavy rains and floods. So Songdo waterfront is the main project of water management. These facilities are for disaster prevention and water quality improvement, water-friendly space for citizens. Also, Songdo International City has implemented various eco-friendly designs. The city has devised a master plan for Jaemulpo Renaissance project to foster balanced development between old downtown and new city. This initiative aims to lay the foundation for sustainable growth by redeveloping the old downtown. A safety inspection service called Help Me has been implemented in the city. This service involves experts conducting on-site inspections and offering advice in response to safety inspection requests from the citizens pertaining to old, dangerous, or disaster vulnerable facilities. This initiative contributes to reduction of safety blind spots. Next, Essential 5 is safeguard natural buffers to enhance the protective functions offered by natural capital. In alliance with 2045 Incheon Carbon Neutrality Vision Declaration made in 2022, city has been implementing 2024 carbon neutrality strategy through collaborative efforts involving citizens, businesses, and public sectors, and promoting greenhouse gas reduction. As a part of this strategy, city has actively promoted urban forest creation projects since 2019. In 2023, Incheon, Seoul, and Gyeonggi-do Province signed agreement for cooperation in metropolitan living area to address common metropolitan issues, including waste disposal of landfill sites and the construction of transportation network. Especially, metropolitan Stockholm landfill site consists of various facilities producing electricity, gas, solid refuse fuels from household solid waste, sewage sludge, and food waste. After duration of use ended, landfill areas became beloved city parks, reborn as a wildflower garden, public golf course, swimming pool, a soccer field, and baseball park. Essential 6 is the institutional capacity building. The city has adopted comprehensive disaster management plan, which includes several measures to ensure institutional capacity building across sectors such as education and training. Through 2023 National Safety Education Implementation Plan, city provides safety education to citizens in cooperation with the private sector and civil society organizations, focusing in particular on vulnerable groups such as the elderly, people with disabilities, and schools. Next is Essential 7, community capacity building. City actively promotes public awareness and involvement in disaster risk reduction efforts through various community-level capacity building activities and partnerships. Through the operation of Safety Culture Movement Promotion Council, Safety Culture Project, and developed for each institution and organizations, and joint public-private safety culture campaigns are promoted. The city also has implemented a school safety program in partnerships with the Ministry of the Interior and Safety and UNDRR to promote a disaster prevention culture in schools through classes and interactive activities for students and through training of teachers. Essential 7 is resilient infrastructure. Our city is implementing several strategies to increase resilience of its critical infrastructure during disasters. This includes rainwater storage facilities that can protect people from floods in low-land areas while allowing to store excess rainwater for a period of drought, and cool roof and heat wave shelters to address urban heat island effect. Next, the city ensures effective disaster response through comprehensive coordinated disaster safety situation system by operating a 24-hour disaster safety situation room and conducting regular drills and trainings. The city has developed the multi-sector post-disaster recovery plans to support expedite recovery and build back better, placing the needs of the affected at the center of the efforts, such as disaster relief response system and psychological recovery support for victims. Next, the best practice is heat wave policy. These days, summers in Korea are becoming excessively hot despite the presence of 4 seasons. In response, my city has established the heat wave countermeasures for the summer periods between May and September to protect the vulnerable people. The city operates emergency systems that coordinate the efforts of various departments, counties, and districts to guide their response based on the severity of the heat wave warning level. Incheon utilized several different heat wave reduction facilities to mitigate the urban heat island phenomenon. The number of such facilities is about 2,500, and they are integrated and deployed in a targeted manner. These facilities include smart shade screens and cooling fogs installed in front of the crosswalks, as well as 28 water sprinkler trucks to be used to mitigate road heat during extreme temperatures. The city used big data analysis to target this support towards the most vulnerable populations. For instance, this analysis identified areas of the city where surface temperatures are highest Where the number of vulnerable families is high and where there is lack of heat shelters nearby. In particular, Incheon City's heat wave measures are focused on elderly individuals living alone. Furthermore, we had provided 2,370 low-income elderly individuals living alone with IoT security funds through the districts and county offices in 2024. These security funds can call 119 and detect temperatures, humidity, air quality, hazardous gases, and record daily life in real time. Each district and county offices operates 1,096 caregivers personnel who check on the safety of vulnerable elderly individuals during hot weather. Especially the city has operated smart disaster situation management system for monitoring all disasters such as heat wave. When heat wave warning are issued, the city disseminates heat wave prevention measures to the citizens through disaster text messaging system. Lastly, I'd like to talk about commitment of Incheon City as a resilience hub. The city has maintained close cooperation with international organizations such as UNDRR and many other cities. And for implementing role of resilience hubs, the city will continue to host study tour, visiting Smart City Operation Center, IF's Promotion Center, Songdo Waterfront, and so on. Also, third International Digital Resilience Leaders Forum was held from October 28 to 29 in 2024 at the Songdo Convention with the support of UNDRR and Ministry of the Interior and Safety to share experiences with each other. And the city submitted its best practice and annual reports on the implementation of the MCR 2030 program to the MCR 2030 dashboard. Lastly, as a resilient hub, Incheon City is continually working to implement a range of policies and commitments to reduce disaster risk. Thank you for your attention.
Much, Susan. So this is the outlook of the activities of Incheon Metropolitan City as the resilience hub in the MCR 2030. And you also have seen an example of how they use the 10 essentials to categorize and understand the progress of their disaster risk reduction in different areas. Susan, I have only one question for you. There are participants who would like to understand more about the citizen safety insurance of Incheon City. This is something very new to many of the cities. Can you explain or share a little bit more of what insurance policy is like?
Yes. Citizen safety insurance is it's a start 2018. And even if personal insurance is paid, it will be paid additionally. Citizen safety insurance will be paid up to $15,000. In case of death, it's up to $15,000. In case of injury, it's up to $10,000. Citizen safety insurance pays less than personal insurance, and the policy covers explosion, fire, building collapse, landslide injury, injury involving public transportation injury by robbery, and death from natural disasters.
And this is run by the government, right? It's the government who is paying to the citizen.
Yes, government pay directly to citizen, local government.
Thank you very much. This is very unique. I don't know if you're aware, but in many of the cases, insurance issue is very new to a lot of the locality. But here in Incheon, the local government insure all the citizens under this citizen safety insurance policies, and also pay out some compensation in case of crisis, emergencies, floods, and as what Susan was mentioning. Thank you so much, Susan. And for those who may not know, our office, UNDRR Global Education and Training Institute, is also based in Incheon. And we also have been receiving many of the groups of training participants who also would like to learn from Incheon. Last year, we received a couple of groups from the Philippines, for example, and Incheon City, as Susan has mentioned, is very open to share experience with many of the other cities who may be interested to learn about risk reduction. Thank you so much again, Susan. Now,
Thank you.
Last but not least, I would like to turn the spotlight to our colleagues from China. Can I see you, Johnny? Yes, Johnny. No, I cannot see. Yeah, so Johnny, he's also the advisor on urban resilience to the mayor of Suji City, but also he is also a speaker and teaches in many of the universities, including Yale, Hong Kong University of Science and Technologies, and Tongji University from China. He's also a co-founder at the Sustainable Finance Institute and an educator and advisor on sustainability issues. Thank you, Johnny, for joining us. He will also be sharing the experience from Suji City, who has been working also to support the cities in disaster risk reduction. So we're very excited to hear from you. So may I pass the floor to you, Johnny.
Thank you, Mai. Thank you very much for this great opportunity to share our experience. As Mai just introduced, I'm the special advisor to the mayor of the city of Suji in China. And by the way, Suji is the first resilience hub and one of the first 6 cities across the country to join MCR 2030 since I think 2023. So let me share my screen and I will dive into it directly. Give me 1 second. Can I share my screen, Mai? It seems like
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So can you see my screen? Sorry. Mai, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see
Okay,
this.
thanks.
It's fine. Yes,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Okay. Before I go into the details about the Suji's resilience plans, I'd like to share a little bit about the background of Suji. Suji actually has more than 4,000 years of history, and it's located approximately 2,000 kilometers south of Shanghai. Shanghai's here, and the city of Suji here. And if I explode the map, what you can see here is the downtown city of Suji is really being surrounded by mountains. So every year, the monsoon season, the typhoon season, when it comes, those huge mountain bodies accumulate a large amount of water. And all those water, in a flash moment, they all go downstream and running into this main river that runs right across the center of the city. It's called the Puyang River. So as you can see, for 4,000 years, this geological feature of the city, that decides the nature of the city's risks, which is flooding. The major risk is flooding. And just in the last 75 years, the city has experienced major floods every 3 to 4 years, all the way until more or less about 2 decades ago, when the city decides, okay, enough. And we have a little bit of financial wherewithal, and we want to improve the city's resilience. Of course, in China, the broad term of resilience was not widely adopted only about 5 10 years ago, when we start mentioning the dual carbon mandates and the climate resilience. And now the term of resilience is becoming more and more widely adopted. But before then, there's various initiatives, including sponge cities and other initiatives, but in the name, actually, the term that we are using as resilience. So this is the geological feature, and the major risks for the city always has been flooding, and most of the resilience initiatives are surrounded by tackling this flooding issue. Now, I'd like to share a little bit about our brief history of or our journey to MCR 2030. As I said, the resilience building, most of the resilience building projects or resilience projects started, two major projects started 2 decades ago. But in early 2023, the mayor of Zhuji decided that we need to look into what other countries globally have been doing to build the city's resilience in a more systematic way. And they're looking into UNDRR's website and learned this, various sorts of great initiatives. And after a few rounds of consultations, including private meetings with the mayor and myself, he decided, we're going to follow the UNDRR, particularly the MCR 2030 initiative. So he officially kicked off the Zhuji's MCR 2030 initiative on June 13th of 2023. And in order to more systematically build the resilience for the city, the mayor and I, we discussed what we're going to do. Well, within our financial power, within our capabilities, we want the best. So we actually hired the 2 co-authors of the scorecard for the UNDRR scorecard systems. It might be a little bit small, but you can see here this is Dale Sands and this is Peter Williams. Those 2 gurus were the co-authors of the scorecards, and including them, and also Green Diamond, the ARISE network. Of course, China does not have the public-private ARISE network, a country network yet, but we hired the US ARISE US network experts, Green Diamond or Todd Fine, he's the CEO of the company, to jointly do a 3-month training plus assessment, and including some of the on-site visits personally conducted by myself together with the expert team. So after 4 months of initiatives and the intensive training, on-site inspections, and the self-assessment, we concluded with confidence that Zhuji has a very good foundation, and we want to share this knowledge. But the first step is to join MCR 2030. So we joined the MCR 2030 and it became a stage city on November 14th, 2023. Again, as I introduced earlier, we are one of the first 6 Chinese cities that joined MCR 2030. And on February 20th, 2024, Zhuji has been recognized the 4th Asia Pacific Resilience Hub and the 1st Resilience Hub in China. So that is our brief MCR 2030 journey, including becoming a resilience hub. But again, Rome is not built just in one day, and so that's Zhuji's resilience capabilities. One of the key takeaways is from that 4 months of intensive training is the application of the 10 essentials and the scorecard. So we scored actually pretty good. This is, of course, some of the data are coming from the our self-assessment. By nature, the scorecard is for our own purposes. Whichever city wants to use, you can use that reference to for your own purposes and do self-assessments. But we are not just limited to our self-assessments. We also as introduced, included the 2 leading experts and authors and other third parties to join. So this score system would look like pretty impressive, but that is not just by the self-assessment, and it's also including experts' view. Overall, Tzu Chi has strong and effective resilience leadership, and the scorecard results indicate the good, better, and the best rating on each essential. But of course, like any other cities, there are always rooms to grow. And so, but overall, Tzu Chi has a very good foundation, and we want to continue to build upon it. And we also identified through this self-assessment process, third-party assessment, we also identified the strength, weaknesses, and the opportunities as well as threats. For example, on the strength side, Tzu Chi has very strong and effective city leadership. The mayor himself personally championed this and lead this, urban resilience all the way through since his term. And so that's a very good foundation. And also the cities across different departments and including some of the private sectors. Of course, I wouldn't say all the private sectors, but a lot of the private sectors, because they are constantly harassed by the floodings and other natural disasters. So they are very aware of the importance of urban designs, as well as building green infrastructures. The weakness side, like any other cities, there are always plenty of weaknesses because we just can't keep up the pace with the natural disasters some of them caused by climate change. The weakness including the assessment of cascading failure risks. That's a key part, in my personal view, is part of the essential 2 is assessment of the cascading failures. For example, if the power grid fails, what happens to the communications network, to hospitals, to other, to the pumps and other flooding control systems. So we need to do more assessment about the cascading failures. And also talking is one, understanding the importance of integrating urban design with resilience in mind. But it's another thing that use the resilience design and land use and zoning properly. So we need to turn those into actions. And of course, the management of the natural buffers, we did some excellent job, but there's still plenty of work to be done further. And business management is another point that we didn't emphasize. China is a top-down structure. So most of the policies and initiatives are driven by the government, but the business side is also critical, especially, for example, during the pandemic, most of the business is being shutting down because of quarantines, and that would reduce the economic resilience. So we want to build the private sectors and especially the economic resilience. All these, so these are also exposed to some of the weaknesses. And of course, build upon this, we have the opportunities charts and the threats chart. Now, I want to mention a little bit about the threat side. It's similar to, in essential number 2, which is the assessment of cascading failures. In essential number 2, we also need to taking serious consideration about the most probable and most severe incidents. Okay, because without understanding our most probable and the most severe disaster scenarios, we don't know if we are spending the money wisely. Any money that's being spent on resilience are necessary, but money is never enough. Any amount of money is never enough to build enough resilience. So we have to spend it wisely, and we have to spend on the most probable and the most severe incidents. So that is something that we also learned from the scorecard application of the scorecard. And of course, we are integrating everything into a centralized digital systems. And because the centralization of digital systems itself is a risk, we are also trying to deploy distributed computings and other technologies, try to spread our technology, because everything right now is so much being driven by technology. For example, the system records. We have the GIS system, asset management system that have been developed over decades. We have accumulated a huge amount of data. And of course, we have the system controls, especially the IoTs, those sensors. So those system records and the system control feeding the data called a digital platform called a Systems of Insights, which include risk analysis, the simulations, the scenario simulations, the situation awareness, and of course, a lot of stuff right now being powered by AI. And the company's DeepSeek is right next door in Hangzhou. So we already integrating some of the DeepSeek AI technologies into the Systems of Insights. And eventually, the System Insights will then spill out the risk information and some of the live informations and the non-sensitive informations, but mission critical informations are shared with all stakeholders. And those sensitive informations, we scrub it, but we pass along to the right stakeholders. So this is the kind of the increased risk awareness, using increased risk awareness to decrease the real risk scenarios through technology. So what we have learned from the MCR 2030 journey, we understand that in order to pull a large-scale project like urban resilience, which needs to be continuously executed as long as the residents and the population is living in the city, we need a solid foundation. We need a systematic framework. Actually, we need a whole bunch of urban frameworks, resilience frameworks. So I think UNDRR is a great resource for us to tap into. And it's not just tap into a single type of risk scenarios. It tackles a whole range of risk scenarios and create a lot of great, wonderful tools, such as the 10 essentials, the scorecards and the scorecard addendums, a lot of them. So that is, what we learned, and that is, I think, the quickest way for any city to quickly, kick off the resilience building. And then the second lessons that we learned is the stakeholder engagement. Risk is not just for one person. For one person, that's personal disaster, but as long as applicable to multiple people, that is really, we need to engage all the stakeholders, relevant stakeholders. And then I just mentioned about the data management platforms, and so we continuously need to improve data management. And the extension of, I mentioned about one of the co-authors of the scorecard, Peter Williams, he worked for IBM, the smart city, for many, many decades, but he's also one of the pioneers, champions of resilience through technology. So that's why he became, I believe, he is one of the most prominent gurus. So his background is smart cities. And when we build resilient cities, we also need a whole tons of infrastructure, IoT infrastructure, and the smart city solutions to be integrated with the data management platforms. And of course, we need to implement best practices, not only the best practice in a single city, but also the best practice all around the world, and try to learn from them and see if they're applicable to our own cities. Last but not the least is any initiatives need to be constantly monitored and evaluated, and this is especially true to resilient city, and especially true to city with limited budget. How to most effectively use the money wherever we get them. We need to monitor the effectiveness and spend wisely. What are our current focuses as a hub city? And the first and foremost is leading as a model city of long-term planning, and that includes institutional systems and the top-level design. We already realize that not only we need to have a urban master plan, we also need to have an urban resilience master plan. So that is something that we're developing with leading institutions like the Tongji University, which is the top which has the top urban planning and the design, architecture design programs in the country. And also urban spatial planning adopts a dual use. We do not want to use waste our facilities and let them sit idle for, for months and even years, only because we build those facilities to expect some disasters to happen, and that's a huge waste. But there are actually plenty of ways that to apply it to design those spatial plannings and facilities for dual purposes. So I think that's something that we also learned from that process. Now, the second focus area is the City of Tsuji is undertaking a comprehensive multi-sectoral effort to enhance urban resilience through targeted infrastructure updates. It's not just a broad, a new round of infrastructure building and investment most by the national or regional governments, but now is shifting from building roads and the bridges and the railways to build resilient infrastructures. That would be tailored to each city. For example, for the city of Tsuji, focus on flood control, underground utility lines, and basically integrate all utilities like power lines, water, sewage systems, telecom lines, etc. in one underground intricate connected systems to better better meet the resilience demand. And of course, these infrastructures are connected to regional grids. So we are not only working with the surrounding cities through those infrastructure grids, but we also use this as an opportunity when we connect our grids, when we connect our infrastructures with other cities, we also use this as an opportunity to influence their resilience building initiatives and through our work and the insights. And the third area of focus is to improve local and basically to encompass the intra-community empowerment and intercity collaboration. I just talked a little bit about the shared infrastructures and using that as a gateway to influence other cities, the surrounding cities, but also the shared systems like early warning systems and the evacuation routes that you definitely have to communicate with the surrounding cities as well. The fourth focus area is building a resilience tech-focused industrial park through multi-level coordination and a joint venture. That basically turns the cost center, well, because building resilience, it spends money. So that is basically a cost center. We actually try to turn it into a profit center, meaning that now that we are a resilience hub and a lot of cities are trying to emulate or learn from us, why don't we also, build industries around it, even like the service industries, IoT, the sensors, technologies that the city of Tsuji has been used to control 368 reservoirs. Those smart solution systems, they are applicable to other cities with similar risk profiles. Why don't we bring those solutions and commercialize it and become a new economic engine? So that is something else that I think other cities in other countries probably can also take a look. Last and not the least is the focus area is that we are developing resilient finance framework. That is actually why the city of Tsuji looking into me, and because I'm working at the Sustainable Finance as a co-founder, we are specializing in financial solutions. Again, building resilience, we never have enough money to build resilience, but we are pulling the resources from Yale University and our Sustainable Finance Institute. We help the city of Tsuji and other cities to build a resilience finance framework, especially to evaluate each specific resilience project's impacts, to predict the impacts. And then the financial institutions can use that as a reference. Oh, this project, for example, is equal to like LEED building certification, like a Plantain. And then if this project, resilience project, we also do sort of like a rating or ranking or a certification, and then qualify that as a resilience, let's say level 3, which is probably the top level of resilience and has the biggest impacts. And then banks could use that, or insurance companies can use that as a reference point to define their rates or to define the premiums, for example. So that is something that we, the city of Zhuji, are pioneering with a whole bunch of other cities together with Yale and Sustainable Finance Institute. And of course, we also welcome you to join us as well for this initiative. So yeah, that is basically my presentation. Sorry, I think probably 2 minutes over threshold. Apologize for that.
Thank you so much, Johnny. It was very interesting, especially on the last slide on the use of AI for data-driven to identify the prioritized investment. Maybe in other circumstance, we could explore how this may be able to help to solicit the results scorecard and other of the city information that might also help fast tracking some of the decision-making process and the planning processes. I only have one question for you because you also emphasize about the system of engagement as the priorities. There is a question on whether there is any specific communication strategies to communicate with the vulnerable or marginalized group in relation to understanding risk and risk reduction practices.
Yeah, I think in the case in China, there's a mandate like to emphasize equity and especially to leverage people out of poverty. And there's it's called a zero poverty drive, which ended, I think 3-4 years ago. And one of the initiatives is that you do not just teach people how to give people fish. You also need to teach them how to fish. So for disaster-prone areas, especially for those marginalized, and we are talking about urban resilience, but a lot of people also residing on the countryside and the suburban areas, and those areas could also be easily affected, maybe even more so being impacted by resilience, by disaster if they hit. So that is something that we have to, not only we need to build a support system, but a support system that can really reach before they need it and when they need it. So that is something also needs to include technology. Like so we used to have a lot, because Zhuji has the mountainous areas. So there were some blind spots of communications. When the flooding happens, residents don't necessarily, are aware, first and foremost. But we managed to bring back some of the broadcasters, which were disappeared for decades. But now some of the regions that brought them back, and the broadcast systems automatically broadcast. But it's also it's connect to the weather stations. Now, I want to strength here is Zhuji last year, the year before, since 2023, and including 2024, built 7 new weather stations. Now the weather prediction timeline can be extended to 65 minutes, up to 65 minutes. And it's precisely to up to 500 meters specialized precision. So it's high resolution, very high resolution, and the temporal matrix. But we also, we shouldn't just benefit the people that have those access. We also need to give the tools that people like 80 years old, 90 years don't have those equipments to or use mobile phones and apps. So those broadcast systems, we need to take those into consideration as well. So hopefully that addresses.
So it's still work in progress to see how that can be reach out widely.
Yeah,
to people. Yeah, but we look forward to hearing more of those updates, because I think now the technology, AI, and all of this is becoming much more attractive as a fast track solution for a lot of the cities. So we look forward for the next opportunities to have you for that.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Johnny.
Glad to share. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So that comes towards the end of the training. We might be a few minutes over the time, but we only have the last sections on the mini quiz, because you have been listening to a lot of the presentations so far. So we would like to do a very mini quiz, only 5 questions with all of you. So please grab the phone again and scan the QR code to Slido. We have 5 questions for you to join, and you have to be fast also in responding to this, because the system will give you the what do you call it, the scoreboard of who actually scores the fastest and the most corrected questions. So please scan the QR code. Now the code is UNDRR number 2. And that will add you to the session. So you should be joining the quiz. You will be asked to put in your name. Yes, I found the first one, oh good. Yeah, there are more people joining here. So we'll give you maybe less than half a minute to get a number of people joining. We still have a few hundred here at the training, which thank you so far for the time that you have spent with us. Okay, let's start when we hit about 100, if possible. And get ready. You have to be fast, read the question and select the right answer. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Let's go for first question. True or false? If your country or city is resilient, it can withstand, I cannot read the question. It can withstand, yeah, sorry. It can withstand and recover from the impact of disaster, shock, and stress in a shorter period of time. True or false? 3, 2, 1. True. If your city is resilient, as Sunisa has explained, you will be able to withstand the disaster better, recovery time will be shorter, and the impact will be less. Let's see who's on the scoreboard. We have Angelo. Whoa, you guessed in 6 seconds. Have Pira, Siddhartha, and many more. Now, ready for the second questions? Let's go. True or false? Resilience is a long-term investment. Even if a government performs well today, the situation may change in the future. True or false? 3, 2, 1. True. Yes, majority of you get it correctly. Yes, resilience is a long-term process. I have emphasized so many times. So situation may change if you started off well today, but you stop doing the work, then the resilience status of your city may change in the future. Let's go number 3. Scoreboard. Oh, Angelo, you are still fast. And also Herv Pierre, Siddhartha, you also still very fast. Let's go to number 3. Which of the following is not an objective of the scorecard? To help identify gaps in disaster risk reduction, to foster consensus and dialogue among a city's multi-stakeholders, to compare with other cities, or to create a baseline for disaster risk reduction planning and implementation. 3, 2, 1. Yes, majority you got it correctly. Scorecard is not for comparing with other cities because it's not a benchmarking tool. You only should compare of your cities over the time. Right? Very good. Scoreboard. Yeah, very minimal change in the leaderboards. Yeah, very good. Let's go. Question 4. What is this? Helps city understand where they are on their resilience journey and guides them on how to improve resilience over time, from understanding risk, stage A, to enhancing DRR planning, stage B, and implementation in stage C. What is this? MCR 2030 participating entity, resilience roadmap, resilience hub, or core partner? 3, 2, 1. Ping pong, yeah, is the resilience roadmap. The roadmap gives you the guidance, the city's guidance to move from understanding better in stage A to planning better in stage B and implementing better in stage C. Very good. Oh, wow. Our leaders are very strong here. Now, last question, get ready. Let's go. Which MCR 2030 Resilience Hub from the Asia-Pacific region share their experiences in today's training? Makati, Incheon, Suchi, or all of the above? This is like a freebie giveaway. 3, 2, 1. I hope we get all right. Oh, I cannot click. Almost right. Yes, it's all of the above. All of the 3 cities share experience with us. So we get the Angelo as the first leader on the scoreboard. You are very good. You are fastest in all of the 5 questions. And thank you all for participating. I hope you get the right answers and you are able to get some key takeaways from today's training. So we have spent 3.5 hours, a little bit over that so far. So I'm gonna lead you to the very last sections. We're gonna be giving you a lot of the links. And we also will be posting this on the chat. So make sure that you copy that, or you can take the screenshot of the screen. First is training certificate. The training will be available for download tomorrow from this QR code or the link on the screen. The name that will be shown on the certificate is according to what you have put for the training registration. Fortunately, we cannot re-customize the training certificate because we have hundreds of the participants here. So we're going to follow only the names that were provided during the registration. And please download it before mid-March, 15th of March, because the link to download will expire. Okay, hope you take this screenshot clearly. Now, the second link we are going to give you, and we have been giving you throughout the training, is the training materials. All of the training materials, the PowerPoint, have been already uploaded to this website. And we'll be also uploading the video recording of the training here as well. So please feel free to come back and revisit or share with your friends for their learning as well. And lastly, we would like to ask you if you can spend some time on the third link to share with us some feedback of the survey of the training. This is open anytime that you can do it, but faster is the possible. And all of these 3 links will also be included in the Zoom messages that will be sent to all of you who attended the training tomorrow. It's an automatic message that will be sent on Zoom. So you have to scroll down to the end of the message from that Zoom message to see all of these 3 links on that Zoom record. So you would be able to access it even though you forgot to take the screenshot here. So lastly, I would like to thank all of the speakers, all the 3 cities that were with us, Liza, Susan, Johnny. Thanks also Sunisa for co-hosting, presenting this with me, and also thanks my colleagues in UNDRR Incheon office for supporting in the back end of running this training. We hope to see you in the next training, and please stay tuned because we're going to be including you in all of the communication materials, and so you will be hearing from us on the next training opportunities. So look forward to be seeing you again in the future, and happy resilience building in the cities. Thank you so much. Goodbye.